Good evening. Can we have the council come to the dais, please? Okay, good evening. I will call to order the February 6th, 2024 meeting, and we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Flag of the United States of America.
Thank you, and I'd like to ask our video crew if they could start the new land acknowledgement from some of our students at Pinole Valley High School.
To acknowledge the Ohlone people who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Ohlone elders, past, present, and future, who call this place Ohlone land, the land that Pinole sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue the tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Ohlone community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding.
Thank you, and later when she gets here, I'll thank Michelle Lamans, teacher at Pinole Valley High School, for putting that together for us. So next is roll call and city clerk's report and statement of conflict.
Good evening, Mayor. Mayor Toms.
Here?
Mayor Pro Tem Sasai.
Here.
Councilmember Tave.
Here.
Councilmember Martinez-Rubin.
Here.
Councilmember Murphy.
Here.
Interim City Manager Gang.
Here.
City Attorney Casher.
Here.
Mayor, the agenda was posted on Thursday, February 1st at 2 p.m. with all legally required notices. Written comments were received in advance of the meeting and distributed to council and staff, posted to the website, and are available to view in the back of the chambers. Does the council have any conflicts to report on our agenda tonight? Seeing none, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have no closed session tonight, so we're going to move ahead to citizens to be heard. Are there any citizens that would like to make a public comment on items not on the agenda?
There are no public comments.
Okay, and we will have a second opportunity later in the meeting for that. So I'd like to skip around a little bit tonight, and I would like to move us to item 8A2. We have some guests here to receive a proclamation for Lunar New Year. So if I can get the council to read this with me. This is for Lunar New Year, February 10th to February 17th, 2024. Whereas the Lunar New Year is the beginning of the calendar year based on the lunar calendar and begins in 2024 on February 10th and ends on February 17th. And
Whereas the first day of Lunar New Year is called the Spring Festival, and the final day is the Lantern Festival. And whereas the date of the Lunar New Year changes every year because it is based on the lunar calendar. The traditional lunar calendar used in Asia is based on the moon's orbit around the Earth, and
whereas Lunar New Year is always celebrated on the second new moon after the winter solstice, and the years are represented by 12 zodiac animals that rotate through 12-year periods: rat, buffalo, tiger, cat, dragon, snake, horse, goat, monkey, rooster, dog, and pig. Each animal is considered to have different strengths and weaknesses that are believed to be passed on to any person born in that year. Whereas 2024 is the year of the dragon, specifically the wood dragon, a symbol that symbolizes power, nobility, honor, luck, and success. And
Whereas people born in its year are seen as caring, attentive to details, likely to follow rules, successful in their careers, and good at making friends, ambitious, energetic, and charismatic, often inspiring others with their passion and enthusiasm. They are considered to be natural leaders, confident and unafraid to take risks, making them magnetic personalities in social and professional circles. And
whereas Lunar New Year is considered a very important holiday in China, Vietnam, Mongolia, North and South Korea, and other parts of Asia, it is an opportunity to reunite with family and celebrate traditions dating back over 4,000 years. And whereas the city of Pinole welcomes the Lunar New Year, wishing you and your family happiness, prosperity, fortune, and good health, and the Year of the Dragon.
Now therefore, I, Maureen Toms, Mayor of the City of Pinole, County of Contra Costa, State of California, on behalf of the City Council and the entire City of Pinole, proclaim February 10th to February 17th, 2024 as Lunar New Year in the City of Pinole and commend its observance to all citizens. And we do have some guests here from the Mandarin School in Pinole to receive this proclamation and get a picture taken with our council. So if I can get the council to join me down at the dais. And we invite one of the liaisons or one of the kids to join us. And if you can talk about your school. So you want to take that back?
Hi, my name is Quinley, and I'm president of Student Council at West County Mandarin School.
Hi, I'm Michaela, and I'm Vice President of the Student Council in West County Mandarin School.
Hello, my name is Garisna, and I'm secretary at West County Mandarin.
Hello, my name's Gia, and I am treasurer of West County Mandarin.
As representatives of West County Mandarin School, we stand before you with gratitude as we receive the proclamation of the Lunar New Year. This proclamation not only acknowledges this auspicious occasion, but also reflects the inclusivity of our diverse community.
Lunar New Year symbolizes renewal, hope, and a brighter future. Being in West County Mandarin School has given us many opportunities to learn and appreciate many different cultures and traditions. It is always great fun to share experiences with our friends, teachers, and families. Today, we are happy to share this experience with Pinole City Council. Thank you for inviting us to be a part of this event. Happy Year of the Dragon! 新年快乐! Okay.
That was excellent. Thank you so much for joining us. Does the council have any comments? Okay, seeing none. Before we go on to the next proclamation, I wanted to ask if Mr. Torres was here. Okay, we have two other proclamations, but given our early start time, the Pinole Valley High School group had requested going later. So we are going to hear next from our presentation about helping Pinole prepare for the 2024 election. And this is by Contra Costa County Clerk Recorder Kristen Connolly, and she will explain to us what E-28 is. So, Kristen?
Excellent. Hello, Mayor Toms and council members. Can you guys hear me okay?
Let's ask the camera folks to turn up the volume a little bit.
Okay. Okay. I don't know if that helps at all, but
it does.
So thank you so much for having me. Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. I am about 3 weeks into, well, actually a full month into my second year in office, and I'm so honored to be before you and talking about why it is E-28. Thank you, Mayor Toms. Today, we are 28 days before Election Day, before the March 5th presidential primary, and it was really important to me to get out and get before all of the councils, all 19 cities and towns, to talk about what's unique about this election and to honestly ask for your help, because you have such unique and deep networks with all of your community members, and our office really does need to lean on you to get the word out. So the first and last slides in my presentation have my contact information. So just want to make sure that any resident of Pinole has my contact information and can get in touch if they have any questions or want to know more. And so my goals for tonight are just to remind everyone in the public what our office does in the Clerk Recorder Elections Department, and to talk about what they need to know in order to participate in this upcoming election with Election Day just 4 weeks away. Can we go to the next slide? So every presentation I give, I just do quickly touch on the statutory responsibilities of our office. So we are charged with conducting fair, impartial, accurate, timely elections for Contra Costa County. And we take great care in maintaining accurate voter registration rolls. We'll give you some stats in just a couple of slides about what that looks like currently. Go to the next slide, please. In addition to elections, our department is also responsible for providing vital records for Contra Costa residents to give you easy access to your birth certificates, to marriage licenses. We perform wedding ceremonies. We also record and we maintain the public record of deeds, property transactions, and we're always happy to give access to folks who are doing historical research for any reason to the historical record of the county. So you can always reach out to our office if you have any questions. Little plug: we are doing destination weddings at the Cobra Experience Museum next Wednesday. So for the same cost of getting married at our ceremony rooms in our office in downtown Martinez, we're going to be at a really cool venue. Next slide. So in terms of our elections division, I do think it's important that residents of Contra Costa know that we have been honored at the state and national level for our work. And so we are just one of 16 jurisdictions in the country that are a part of the Centers for Elections Excellence initial cohort. And what we're doing is helping to set standards and establish values for the profession of election administration around the country. Just one other county, Shasta County, is the only other jurisdiction in California that's a part of this. And this came with $2 million of grant money that that really has been able to augment what we're doing in with our public funds to increase our outreach efforts and help make it clear to all voters in all communities. And we're really trying to focus more on our under-registered communities. We've also been honored for our leadership of the 11 County Bay Area Elections Coalition, and we work collaboratively. Can you go to the next slide, please? We're continuing to produce documents that we think will help voters better understand the process. So these are 2 documents, and I'm happy to follow up and make sure that we get these documents to your clerk so that if you want to send these documents out, right? We think voters like knowing, how do I know my vote was counted? And why does it take so long to count votes? So these are 2 new documents that were put together for our coalition in conjunction with a nonpartisan nonprofit called the Election Group. So we're just always trying to be a source of reliable information for all voters. Next slide, please. So this slide just goes through a little bit about Contra Costa by the numbers. So we have a little over 700,000 registered voters. And generally, the last 4 years, really, since the onset of the pandemic, our voters participate in our elections through vote-by-mail ballots, by and large. 90 to 95% of the vote comes in that way. And of that vote-by-mail vote, about half of it comes in through our secure drop boxes, and about half comes through the United States Postal Service. So that's something that's very, very popular with our voters, mailing a ballot to every voter. We've been using a central count model since 2022, which means that we don't tally any votes at polling places anymore. We ended that practice. We bring everything on election day back to our office to go through our fastest, most reliable tally machines. Just a little note about our size. We are authorized for just 32 permanent FTEs. 2 of those are newly authorized in December with some Measure X funding. But we are small by comparison. I referenced here on the slide that Santa Clara, the county of Santa Clara has just 400,000 more permanent registered voters, but they have 90 permanent FTEs, right? So their staff is 3 times the staff of our permanent election staff. But really, why I'm before you tonight is that this is the first election in the history of California where we're mailing a ballot to every registered voter in a partisan presidential primary. So I'll get more of that in a second. Next slide, please. So this next slide is to give you a sense of Pinole by the numbers. And this will probably not be a surprise to any of you as the elected representatives of the city of Pinole. But we've got 12,250 registered voters, which we serve in 12 separate precincts. You can see the partisan breakdown of registered voters. And the reason that the no party preference voters are highlighted is that unless there are a couple of steps taken or a step taken by a no party preference voter, these 20% of voters from the city of Pinole will get ballots that do not have any presidential candidates on them. And so I'm here to talk tonight about messages that we would love for you to amplify to your residents so that they know how to express a preference for president if that's something that they want to do. 19 residents from Pinole have committed to help us with the presidential primary. And the highest turnout for in-person voting in Pinole back in the November 22 election was the Pinole Valley Community Center, who had 204 people vote on election day. Next slide, please. So in December, we mailed this postcard. It looks like this, more or less, to all 156,000 residents in Contra Costa County who are registered as no party preference voters. We only heard back from about 8,000 of them. And so the vast majority of people opening their mailboxes today and tomorrow, because that's when we expect everybody's ballots to really hit, is today and tomorrow. Some of you may have already gotten your ballots. That these no party preference voters will not have presidential candidates. And it's a little bit confusing because there are different rules for different political parties. So any no party preference voter in Contra Costa can request to vote what's called a crossover ballot for 3 political parties. So that includes the Democratic Party, the American Independent Party, and the Libertarian Party. And so if that's what a voter wants to vote, we have special crossover ballots. I should note those ballots will not include the party committee ballots for those parties, just the presidential candidates. That's what the parties have determined is how they would like to proceed. However, if a voter wants to vote in the Republican, Green Party, or Peace and Freedom Party presidential primaries, they need to re-register with that particular political party. And they have to do so by February 20th if they want us to send them a ballot. So, and then I have some information about how to contact our office. Next slide, please. This is so confusing, the no party preference stuff. I even recorded an entire podcast about it. There's a link to it here in the slide deck, but the Santa Clara County does their own election podcast, and they asked me to come down on behalf of the coalition and talk about how no party preference voting works. One upside is the first and only professional picture where I look somewhat tall, because I'm a bit taller than my friend Evelyn from Santa Clara in this photo. But I did just want to, encourage any of you that have networks to email residents about this, because I just really want to reassure no party preference voters that they can get a ballot. We have instructions on the ballots, on the no party preference ballots, about how to get in touch with our office. But I also want to emphasize, you can go to the next slide, that a no party preference voter, even if they got a ballot that doesn't have any presidential candidates on it, two important things. Number one, there's a lot of other important ballots and races on your ballot. There's lots of reasons to go vote. But also, at any of our in-person voting experiences, right? So there's regional early voting that will happen starting March 1st. And that the closest spot to do that for regional in-person voting is at the Richmond Memorial Auditorium. And the address is listed here on the slide. I've also listed the hours. So regional early voting is available Friday, March 1st, Saturday, March 2nd, and Monday, March 4th. So that's an option. Also, our office at 555 Escobar in Martinez, not very far from Pinole, is available all month long in order to for early voting. So we opened our polling place yesterday and are happy to welcome voters from all across the county if you want to vote in person. And all of our poll workers will be equipped to help out the no party preference voters with either voting a crossover ballot or re-registering and voting for those other three parties. That's the Republican, the Peace and Freedom, and the Green Party require re-registration. I did want to note the box in Pinole is on Pear Street. So, and our secure drop boxes have an updated look, as do our envelopes. So we want to make it really clear that it's a branded, official, secure drop box. And we are emptying those. Our staff is out emptying those every day now that ballots are out. Next slide, please. So in terms of what's happening with the timeline of the election, as Mayor Toms pointed out, we are at E-minus 28. So, right, we've already got your voter information guides to you in the mail. Ballots went out starting on Monday, getting processed. They were actually moved into place at the Oakland processing facility for the USPS on Sunday in anticipation of the storms. So, you have not received your ballot by the end of this week, please call our office so that we can determine if something has happened and we can make sure that you get a ballot so you can conveniently vote in any of the manners available, any manner available to you. So I did want to note again, the last day to register online. You'll see that E-minus 15. And then, but again, even if you are not registered, you can vote provisionally on election day at any of our polling places, or you can vote provisionally at any of our early voting sites. Again, we're equipped to help you with what you need to do that successfully. Election day is 4 weeks from today, which is Tuesday, March 5th. But I did want to note, part of the reason it does take us a long time to count the votes in California is that under California election law, we need to accept and count any ballot that is postmarked up, to election day. So if it's postmarked by March 5th, but we accept it for a full week after election day with that postmark. So E+7 is the drop dead deadline for accepting ballots. So that's what I wanted to point out on this slide. Next slide, please. So here's the ask. What can you do to help us? So we just really want to ask that you communicate with your residents and reinforce these important this important election information, specifically around the NPP voters being able to request a crossover ballot, and that they would need to re-register if they want to participate in the Republican, Peace and Freedom, or Green Party primaries. But just generally, we want to have you encourage high school students in Pinole to become student poll workers. Although those amazing 5th grade leaders from the West County Mandarin School are still a bit too young, you need to be 16, but I want to plant a seed in case they're still watching, that they can participate. You just need to be 16 years old and get the permission of your school principal if you're in school, and your parents. But in addition to being a student poll worker, we would love for you to consider inviting anyone from our staff to speak to your youth commission. One of our voter services supervisors for election day operations just spoke last week to the Pittsburgh Youth Commission, and that was very well received. We want to, there's so many resources for us to build up our bench of young people involved in elections, and because we have a vested interest in building our future workforce. Next slide, please. Another way to help would be to consider yourself an ambassador for registering new voters year-round. There are residents of our communities that become citizens year-round. We want to make sure that we are welcoming them and helping them register to vote. And I welcome any ideas you might have to help us do that better. If you can reinforce the safety messages with your local police departments, I've been communicating with local law enforcement countywide through the Contra Costa Police Chiefs Association, and have sent out an updated legislative guide for relevant election codes that that all law enforcement should be aware of in order to protect the safety and security of all of our secure drop boxes and the 147 polling places. So if you can reinforce that with your police force, I'd much appreciate, really appreciate that. You can also support California High School Voter Education Weeks that happen twice a year, the last 2 weeks of April and the last 2 weeks of September. So if you want to join us out at Pinole Valley High or any other high school in the community or around the county, please contact my office. Please let me know. I think it really makes it more effective if you can join our election staff. That makes it real for your residents, that they can see a locally elected leader supporting the message of pre-registering 16 and 17-year-olds as well as registering 18-year-olds. I did want to flag that in this year, the California Secretary of State, Dr. Shirley Weber, has decided to lift up the famous speech by Fannie Lou Hamer talking about where she uses the line that she's so sick and tired of being sick and tired, because Dr. Weber is hoping to connect, remind, inspire Californians to vote with the connection to the civil rights movement. So any messages related to that from the Secretary of State's office, we will certainly be sharing and reinforcing. And because I think that's a very important message to get out this year as we hope to drive up turnout. I just ask you to check out our website and follow us on social media. Next slide. So we're easy to reach. You can use these QR codes to follow us on Instagram and on TikTok. Yes, we are on TikTok, and that has to do with our desire to reach young people. You will see from the next slide, go ahead, that we are worried about the youth vote. And so Dawn Kruger, our chief staff person for outreach, she assembled this slide when she started diving into midterm youth turnout. And you'll see that, really low youth turnout. This is the 18 to 24 is the age range in 2014. And there was a significant increase 4 years later in the 2018 cycle. You'll see that over 30%. Unfortunately, there's an 8.2% drop in the 22 cycle. And so that's a trend we want to help correct. So we'd love your help. And of course, this is California data, but in many ways, Contra Costa is a microcosm of California. Next slide. So I did just want to mention that we have collaborated. We did a tabletop exercise through the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections, which is a national nonprofit of elections officials and law enforcement, to talk about best practices to prepare for a safe and secure election. So these are their 5 steps. We are engaged and follow all of those. We actually did this tabletop exercise at the Sheriff's Emergency Operations Center. We went through a number of scenarios, including AI generated what happens when there's false images put out on election day, or, for example, false election results released purportedly from the elections office in the middle of the day. We've just worked through different scenarios to help us get ready. And I was grateful to have enough law enforcement professionals to be at every single table with our election staff. There was just a whole lot of learning that happened. Next slide. And this is just a snapshot of the beginning of the legislative update from the Committee for Safe and Secure Elections that I have sent out to Sheriff Livingston in hopes that it'll get out through the Contra Costa Police Chiefs Association, so that all the latest updates related to law enforcement and California election code are just at the fingertips to help support a successful election 4 weeks from now. And really, it's election month, right? I mean, people have ballots. The drop boxes are open. People can be voting. And every single drop box has the protections that are afforded a polling place on election day. And it's just important that everybody know that. So I'm excited about what we're learning together, and that our office is taking the physical security of our election as seriously as we're taking the cyber security of our election. And we've made a lot of investments in cyber and in disaster recovery, so that we are using this grant money to just really make us top-notch and prepared for whatever might come our way. Next slide. So I think that's it in terms of, so I'm back to just my contact information, but I'm happy to open it up to questions or suggestions that you might have. And really thank you in advance for what you will do to help support the elections division as elected leaders of Pinole.
Great, thank you for that presentation. I'm going to start from my right. Does anybody have any questions of our clerk recorder? I'll open it up to public comment. Do we have any public comment on this?
No, there are no public comments.
Okay. With that, I again want to thank you, Ms. Connolly, for coming and educating us, and we'll work to get some information out to our public. Again, thank you very much.
Thank you for the time. I really appreciate it. Take care.
Was that regarding this item?
No.
Okay. All right. Before I go back to the beginning of the agenda, I just wanted to find out if there was a representative for Mr. Torres with music repertoire here. Oh, okay. Perfect. We will do your proclamation, and then we'll start again. So we're jumping around today. So we're going to go to item 8A3, and this is celebrating the music repertoire's 25th anniversary. Whereas the music repertoire was founded by Henry Torres in 1998 in the city of Pinole, and
Whereas the music repertoire has taught more than 600 students since 1999, and
Whereas the students come from Pinole and surrounding areas all around the Bay Area, including statewide and international since 2019. And
Whereas students performed the Music Outreach Program since 2002 and have traveled to countries like Italy, France, Portugal, Spain, Ireland, Philippines, and
Whereas the repertoire has produced over 200 programs, recitals, and public performances, and supported cultural programs, community activities, free music performances, and free lessons.
now therefore I, Maureen Toms, Mayor of the City of Pinole, County of Contra Costa, State of California, on behalf of the City Council and the entire City of Pinole, do hereby congratulate the music repertoires on their 25 years of bringing music to the community and encourage all residents to acknowledge and applaud this milestone. And if I can ask the council to join me for a photo.
To sing a song?
Yes.
I am apologizing for my time. Thank you, sir. Thank you. It's an honor, sir. I can say something a little bit. Just thank you.
I want to speak on Dear Mayor, dear council members, thank you very much for the honor. Again, I apologize for not being on time. I was misinformed at the time. Actually, I have my whole group was supposed to be here at 6, but they're gonna be here, but I don't know. So again, thank you very much for the honor, and I want to thank the city for helping small businesses like ours. If not for the city, especially during the hard times, during COVID and everything, if not for the city, we're not here. So thank you very much again, gentlemen, ma'am. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies. Thank you.
Great, thank you, and congratulations. Okay, so with that, I'm going to take us back to the beginning of the agenda, and that's on reports and communications, and of course, I'm not ready. Maybe just a moment. Okay. Thank you. For the mayor's report, I wanted to let folks know that the Wildfire Prevention Coordinating Group, MOU, was approved by the County Board of Supervisors today and will be brought forward to the City of Pinole for consideration at a future meeting. And then last week, I attended the mayor's conference where we received the same presentation that we just had from our county clerk recorder, Kristen Connolly. I also wanted to note that I've had some communication with Caltrans, and they do have the creek overcrossing of I-80, the on and off ramps that go over the creek. They have a project of installing trash fences along that area to prevent trash from going from the freeway down into the creek. And I've been monitoring that. I don't know when bids close or when construction starts, but they did have it out for advertisement. And then 2 weeks ago, I attended the Mayor and Council Member Academy. Some of the highlights of that included the mayor, city manager discussion about each of them staying in their lanes, which I thought was really interesting. There was discussion of a few cities that where if they want to have a new agenda item, whoever wants to sponsor that presents just a small description to the county clerk and the city manager a week ahead of time with a description, so it's on the agenda. That's something that we may want to think about. There were also a number of other cities that have annual goal-setting meetings, and I know that we've done that every 2 years when we have new council members, but it's something that we might want to consider having annually. And then there was also talk about ACA 1, which is an infrastructure bond item, and that would allow a bond measure to pass for infrastructure at only 55% of the vote. So that's, we've been talking about finances, so I thought that that was interesting. And then I attended a webinar along with Councilmember Martinez-Rubin on earthquake brace and bolt retrofits. And while I was on the webinar, I put in our zip code, and our community is eligible. And it's a grant of up to $3,000 of where the median cost to bolt and secure your foundations is about $5,200. And then if you income qualify, you may get all of it covered. So it's worth this, to take a look at it, for our citizens to take a look at. So that concludes the mayor's report. And we have no mayor or council appointments, so I'll move on to city council committee reports and communications, and I'll start with our mayor pro tem.
Thank you. Well, first I want to start off with January 18. So I attended the WestCat Board Directors meeting, pretty short meeting, but some of the highlights from that meeting included a presentation and discussion of our audited financial statements for the year ending June 30, 2023, as well as the presentation and discussion of our first quarter financial and operating data report. A heads up for the public, our next board meeting that was originally scheduled on February 8 has been canceled, and our next meeting will be scheduled for March 14. On the 19th, I attended my first Cal Cities Public Safety Policy Committee. In that meeting, we voted to adopt our 2024 work program, as well as the committee's recommendations on several bills that address public safety at the state level. One of the areas of focus for our committee is combating organized retail theft. So this is an ongoing discussion with our committee. We'll be meeting on March 22 in person in Burbank to discuss this further. So I'm very, very excited to talk with our colleagues across the state and bring some of their ideas that they're implementing in their communities here for us to consider in Pinole. On the 22nd, I met with Mayor Toms, City Attorney Casher, Director Whalen, and her staff for our Municipal Code Ad Hoc Subcommittee. In this meeting, we received an overview of the future ordinances and policies for our subcommittee's consideration this year, and also provide direction on our single-use plastics ordinance, which I'm happy to keep advancing. I also attended our City Seal Ad Hoc Subcommittee meeting with Councilor Martinez-Rubin, and very happy to say that we're on track to bring back our new City Seal logo and branding guidelines for our community and our council to see in the spring. So very happy about that. And lastly, was in attendance for both the West County Mayors and Supervisors meeting, as well as the recent Contra Costa Mayors Conference. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Murphy.
Hey, good evening, everyone, and happy Black History Month, Lunar New Year, and everything that we're celebrating. I want to say I'm super proud of our city, but also just how this Black History Month is starting. As folks know, Black History Month is a time to celebrate and recognize the tremendous accomplishments and contributions of our brilliant Black leaders and sisters around the world, but certainly locally at home. I am looking forward to, of course, but also saddened to adjourn our meeting tonight in memory, of course, of former Mayor Irma Anderson. She was the former Richmond mayor of California, and she passed away this past week. And just wanted to say she was certainly Black history in West Contra Costa County. She served as student body president and valedictorian of her high school, and became one of the first Black students to attend and graduate Cornell University School of Nursing. She was a tremendous leader in public health and had a commitment to service that really led her to run for Richmond City Council and eventually became mayor, the first Black woman to be mayor in the city of Richmond, California. And certainly her mentorship and really strategic advice even inspired me not only to run for city council, but also to the difficulties of serving in public office, she knew very well, and she always was open to sharing that. So I just wanted to honor her in my communications report, because I know that so many folks think about Black history of folks across the United States, well, we have many Black trailblazers right here in West Contra Costa County and certainly in Pinole that we should honor. And so looking forward to adjourning her memory tonight, but also, of course, sad for her passing and, of course, thinking about her family and her friends. In a little bit more exciting news, I wanted to just announce to the City Council and public that I have now been appointed to the African American Caucus of the California League of Cities. The African American Caucus connects city officials to policymakers by working with the California State Legislature and the Legislative Black Caucus, as well as corporate and civic leaders, in efforts to build long-lasting relationships in public policy. It was established in 1998, and one of the primary objectives is to promote diversity in the League of California Cities, and again through the state legislature. We host vital symposiums and topics and coordinate participation within the Cal Cities decision-making process. So just wanted to say thank you again to the African American Caucus Board and looking forward to increased involvement with Cal Cities. Last week, I was able to attend the San Francisco Business Times Mayor's Forecast. This event is really cool. It happens every year, and it includes breakfast with many other council members and mayors across the region. It had a lively conversation with the Oakland Mayor, Sheng Tao, as well as the San Francisco Mayor, London Breed, really about the future of their cities, but also the future of the region and how everyone in the room, between, again, corporate and civic leaders, but also council members and mayors, could really work to address some of the safety issues that are happening across the region, and also find ways of valued partnership together as we think about what's ahead. So again, wonderful event. Thank you to the San Francisco Business Times for hosting that and creating the space. And also thank you to the East Bay Economic Development Alliance for their leadership in making it happen to get folks in the room as well. And last but not least, I just wanted to, again, congratulate someone. Many of us know her, State Senator Nancy Skinner. This past week, I joined her as well as some MCE Clean Energy staff at the Power Association of California's luncheon. The Power Association hosts monthly meetings and educational seminars to help professionals really understand the challenges of confronting the power industry. They've had a number of guest speakers, including legislators and industry executives, as well as public officials and other experts from regulated and unregulated side of the industry. And I would want to congratulate our state senator, Nancy Skinner, on winning the really a Trailblazer Award. She has done so much around the issue of energy storage, broadly clean energy, and of course, pro-environmental policy. She was honored this past week in San Francisco by the Power Association of Northern California. It was an honor to join her and celebrate our many accomplishments, certainly in clean energy, but across the board. And this will be the last year, at least she'll be serving as our state senator. I don't know what's to come. You'll have to ask her, but again, congratulations to her. And always, it's great to see that our region is being recognized for incredible leadership. Thank you.
Thank you for your report and congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll move to my left. Councilmember Tave?
Yeah, so January 19th was a WICTAC meeting. I got appointed to the vice chair for WICTAC, so that was a good thing for City of Pinole. My plan is to start really focusing on transportation in the region. We had a couple projects that are directly related to Pinole, and there are other things that we have going as far as the roads. I'm feeling a little bit more that we got to start getting involved with CCTA directly, so I'm planning on trying to get a meeting with Tim Hale to start discussing a little bit more of the local issues that we're experiencing. At that meeting, there was an interesting topic. It was a company called Via that did basically carpooling or car service, kind of like Uber or Lyft, but just for the city of Pinole. There were some really interesting numbers that came out of that. Was that for the city of Richmond, there was 2,000 to 4,000 rides that were going on in the city of Richmond. A lot of them were your basics, just the markets, school drop-off, so parents would get in the car with the kids and go to school. So it just started to really show like 25% of those rides were school rides. And so it started to really make sense that there's some really big centers like our markets, just drawing those parallels to Pinole, is that the markets, the schools, and all the traffic that's generated from that. So we're looking to hear more. I think they're doing an expansion through Richmond because it was just a small portion of it, but that expansion is almost a 50% move for the city of Richmond, which I believe they received a grant to do this program. So that was a good meeting. I think that, as we have these meetings and think about transportation, just, if you want to let everybody know, just kind of reach out to me and I'll try to move those issues forward on that board. Rita Xavier, Councilmember Xavier, is now the president of the board. So we did have that switch out for the year. So I'm going to be talking with her to try to see what we're moving forward as far as agendas go. So that's the update on that. We had the other topic I wanted to just briefly talk about was on Thursday there's also a reorg that's going to be happening at WICMA. So that's our Recycle More board. So we're talking about the switch out for leadership there. And we have a few more topics that are going to be coming out of that board that I'm going to bringing back to council. So that's pretty much the highlights of the report. Attended the mayor's conference in El Cerrito, had a good event there. So that's what we got.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Martinez Rubin.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Couple of things more than a couple, several things that have happened since we last met on the 16th of January. 2 days after that, the statewide policy committee of Cal Cities, the Revenue and Taxation Policy Committee, on which I serve, met and discussed its plan for 2024. The committee's notes and minutes are available on the Cal Cities website for you all to take advantage of and mull through, but I'll read some of the highlights of what came out of that particular meeting. The advocacy priorities for all policy committees include safeguarding local revenues and bolstering economic development. So the Policy and Taxation, the Revenue and Taxation Policy Committee then has a focus on trying to support and or identify means of doing that so that we can continue funding those larger projects that we are often having to defer from one year to the next and largely depend on statewide revenues. So we got an overview from the Legislative Analyst Office about what the budget holds for us and expecting that there will be some possible decreases overall in statewide funding. Nonetheless, there are some means of, as voters, we had the presentation from our county clerk on voting, and it's important for us not only as electeds, but as well as for our resident voters to be aware of some of the statewide initiatives or measures that will appear on the ballot. Among those, Mayor Toms, you mentioned having heard a presentation on ACA 1. Assembly Constitutional Amendment 1. And this specifically presented to us at the committee by Assembly Majority Leader Cecilia Aguiar Curry, who authored this. So she joined the meeting to discuss ACA 1, and what it does, it lowers the voter threshold for local governments to a supermajority of 55% to be able to pass local measures related to infrastructure and affordable housing. So it makes it a little less challenging or onerous to get that larger percentage, provided that it passes. There would also be exemptions to vulnerable populations such as seniors and those on SSI, Supplemental Security Income, or SSDI. A couple of other things that will appear on this November's ballot, something called the Taxpayer Protection and Government Accountability Act. We need to be watchful of what that really means and who is funding the larger campaign behind it. What implications there will be that CBRT will impose stricter rules for raising taxes and fees that fund local government services. So as though on the surface, given its name alone, it might appear very attractive, we really need to take a look at what it might do for us who rely in local government on the revenues to make available services as we know them. As Cal City staff has determined, this measure would put at risk billions of dollars that are dedicated to funding local service delivery. And some of those dollars is what Pinole receives. The work plan for the committee is among the topics to be discussed in the future meetings, including the one that will be in Burbank live in March, is sales and use tax, infrastructure funding, and gas and electric vehicles, or the implications of how the state is moving toward gas and toward electric vehicles away from gas, and what that would be doing for revenues as we know them today. And the committee will take an active role in addressing declines in gas tax revenues from the adoption of electric vehicles. So that's about that committee. I also subsequently met as part of the East Bay Division of Cal Cities for other committee members from other committees to present what highlights there are out of their committees, and for that we met on the 23rd. As part of the City CO Ad Hoc Committee, along with Councilmember Sasai, continue to work with Assistant to the City Manager to give us an idea of the progress of that. And then I also attended the Mayor's Conference to hear from our County Clerk and Registrar, Ms. Connolly, who presented to us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those reports. Next item on the agenda is council requests for future agenda items. Do we have any requests? Yes, Councilmember Sasai.
Yes, I have one request for tonight. Just give me 1 second here. So, yeah, my only request is actually for a city sponsorship. And so it's a sponsorship for Pinole Valley High School's upcoming API Heritage Month events. So this would include a sponsorship of $3,200 to cover some of the costs for high school students who are organizing a study trip to the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco for API Heritage Month. This would cover travel costs for students. They usually take BART there each year. And it's also covered by our educators who normally pay this out of pocket. But the cost would go to rent out a charter bus instead, and also would cover the cost for food and museum tickets for students who do not have the financial means to cover that for themselves. And also want to work into this to have PCTV come to their concert at their Pinole Valley High School Performing Arts Theater to air their annual API concert for our community to see. So I know that's a long request, but happy to take any questions.
Okay, any thoughts on that? Just a question of our city attorney. Is that something that's allowed for the city to sponsor an event?
I believe so.
Okay. And then the timing of this, is this April?
Yes, so API Heritage Month is in May. So if that can come back to council, possibly first meeting in March.
Okay. And any objections?
Discussion. Yeah, can we discuss now? No, we'll discuss that.
Whether or not
Okay.
you want to have a future agenda item.
Right, yeah.
Okay. All those in, or is there a second?
A second.
Okay. Any other discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I'm just wondering what that vote was. Was that a 5-0? Okay, thank you. Okay, any other future agenda items?
Yes, Mayor.
Yes.
I'd like to move that we, at the first City Council meeting of March 2024, present a proclamation for Prescription Drug Abuse Awareness Month, if that's not currently in our proclamation list.
Okay, and I'll second that.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
Any,
Number two would be to direct staff to begin providing quarterly updates for the economic development plan and strategy.
I'll second that.
okay, plan. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Point of
Yes.
order. Can we have discussion on items for future agenda?
It's really
It's like, no, right? It's just,
so the item is really to whether or not it should go on the agenda. So you can just it's really not a discussion of the merits of the
got it.
actual
Okay.
agenda item. I wouldn't mind a clarification. Would this be a council level presentation for the quarterly updates on the economic development plan, or just a report to the council?
I think for the what I've seen in the past is mostly consent calendar items. It'd be wonderful. I think we moved forward with the communications and engagement update as of tonight in the consent calendar. So I'm happy to receive it through the consent calendar as well. Unless another council member prefers to have a full presentation about it.
No, I'm satisfied with just a consent item.
Thank you.
I have heard that they're pretty overloaded. So a consent item would be, I think, appropriate.
Thank you.
Okay, and that passed, that was a 5-0? Okay, thank you. Any other future agenda items?
I have one.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like that the council discuss the creation of a Mills Act program to build on the core strengths of the city as well as to foster an environment for economic progress.
I will second that. Any discussion? And I'll just, I'll note that I had a conversation with a property owner of a historic home that heard about this program from staff, and there's some procedures that we would need to go through in order for that property owner to take advantage of the program. So with that, all those in favor? Aye? Aye?
Aye.
Any way that we can have that motion repeated? I'm just,
It's discussion of for the creation of a Mills Act program.
I don't want to launch a discussion. Any way you can expand on what that would entail? It's the Meals Act program.
Mills Act program. Mm-hmm.
Great, and this is for discussion for us to
Mm-hmm.
speak. Great, okay. Happy to vote yes for that.
Did you say meals or mills?
Mills, M-I-L-L-S.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, I guess we'll discuss it then.
Happy to clarify.
Sounds good.
M-I-L-L-S, yes.
I think we were all wondering that at the time. So we weren't sure, so yes, thank you.
So that kind of takes me back to one of the items that I heard at the training, which was having a description of what a future agenda item might entail. That way, staff could react to it and, better respond. And it would be something in writing where we can look it up. So I don't know if we need to have an agenda item to discuss that procedure.
Just through the chair, we do have our council meeting procedures, so we could amend those or discuss that as part of, a discussion of the council meeting procedures. That's probably the best way to handle that.
Okay, and would you suggest that we move that forward as a future agenda item or just work behind the scenes on presenting something?
Yeah, so we do bring that forward at the end of every year, but if the council would like to, have that addressed earlier than December, then we would need a request for a future agenda item.
Okay, I would like to move that as a future agenda item.
I'll second.
So we got a 5-5 all on the last one on the Mills Act, and then we're voting for this one now, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Yes.
And all those in favor, say aye. Aye?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? That was a 5-0. We've given staff a really long list of things. Is there any other future agenda items? Okay. Seeing none. And we do need to recognize that it's not going to happen in the next 2 to 4 weeks.
So no.
Yeah.
Mayor, we can also discuss at the next meeting during future agenda items the forecast if we need to. So we can, if the staff feels obliged to provide recommendations on what should be fast forward or not, we can
Excellent.
talk about that next time.
Yeah, no future agenda items.
Okay. All right. Thank you for those. Did I miss any? Okay. With that, we'll move on to city manager's report and department staff.
Actually, through the chair, did we have a public comment for
Oh.
the last item?
Yes, thank you.
Well, staff, members of the public, my name is Rafael Mess. I'm a resident of Pinole. And for a future agenda item tonight, I would like to ask the council to consider issuing a proclamation in April honoring Autism Acceptance Month. There are, I assume, many people in the city of Pinole who are on the autism spectrum, including myself. And I believe it would benefit the community and the city as a whole to recognize the contributions and different ways that we can view, interact, discuss, and contribute to our community just as much so as neurotypical people can. So I figured I'd bring this up as a potential future agenda item well before April so the council could consider a proclamation recognizing the month in a timely manner. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I'd like to move that we have Autism Awareness Month proclamation in April.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Yes.
Aye. And we'll hear from the back. Was that a yes for autism?
Yes.
Okay, that's a 5-0. Thank you. Okay, now I'll move on to city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. A few items for everybody tonight. One with the police department. In our continued effort to modernize our operations, the police department, it will be transitioning, finally, from our legacy police blotter to a contemporary web-based application. The PD will introduce that. It's called Citizen RIMS, and it's an enhanced feature and also provides the community an opportunity to do a search and to get some more information that they currently get from the police blotter. That will be presented next council meeting when the police department does their update, and they'll talk about that and what that looks like and what the community can expect from that. So we're excited about that. Under Public Works, as we all know, we had some severe storms over the last week, caused a lot of damage. Public Works staff was prepared for the event and forecasted the storm and responded to a few emergencies. They pumped wastewater manhole at Pinion Avenue during the Sunday night event, and there was a high alarm that was triggered there. They responded and removed broken tree branches in travel lanes throughout the city, and operations and maintenance staff addressed a lot of new potholes around town. So they were very busy, and we appreciate the effort and the responsiveness of that crew. As we all know, at the last council, we talked about a ballot measure and the RFP. We received 6 proposals. We're currently going to be reviewing those, and then we'll come back to which consultant that was selected. So we'll share that with you at the next council meeting. Communications update. The Community Services Department is currently surveying the community for an outdoor cinema and concert series. There's a link to that survey on the city's website and social media pages. So please take a few minutes to complete the survey and help us select the movies and the music for our Summer at Fernandez Park series. That will be helpful for our staff to make sure we're meeting the needs of the community. And then the first edition, if you've seen, of the Wreck and Roll newsletter was released last week. It's been well received, and it will be released once a month. So we're excited about that new communication method as well. As we all know, the annual egg hunt will take place Saturday, March 16th from 10 to 2 at Fernandez Park. More information can be found on the city's website and also social media pages about that event. We're looking for a great event, and hopefully everybody will come out and enjoy themselves for that. And then in the Pulse, we will now be sharing any grants that the city will be applying for to help increase awareness within the community so they know what we're looking for and what we're looking to do and accomplish through that grant program. And then, as we know, planning has begun with the 4th of July event and Earth Day. Never too early to prepare for the July 4th. Once we have established all the details, we'll be notifying the community through our usual channels for that as well. And then 5 logo designs will be presented this week to the community via the survey to gather feedback before a final round of revisions. The revised logo designs are a result of input for the community, City Seal ad hoc subcommittee, and members of the Confederated Village of the Legion Nations. Staff plans to present the final drafts to the proposed logo and seal to City Council on March 16th, as Councilman Sasai has mentioned earlier. That's all my report. Thank you so much.
Thank you for that report. Is there a city attorney's report?
I have a quick question for
Oh,
the city manager's
yes.
report. Two questions. I wanted to ask if staff can talk about the Economic Development Summit, those details, if you don't mind laying that out.
Yeah, if it's okay, I'm going to ask Lily to step up, Director Whalen to come up and talk a little bit about that and the details of that summit that's going to be coming up.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. The city will be hosting an economic development summit on February 15th. The primary audience is our civic organizations and business community, and we're going to be unveiling our economic development strategy to those groups at the summit and inviting them to participate in the process. Did you have?
Just date and time for the, date, time, and location.
Sure, it'll be, it's on February 15th. It's at the morning in downtown Pinole. It is by invite only because we're trying to keep the event somewhat small.
Okay.
So if anyone has any questions, they can reach out to me at my email or my phone number.
Thank you so much,
Sure
Director
thing.
Whalen. And then my second question is, I know there's been a lot of interest from the community in an open house for Fire Station 74. Do we have a date and time set for that yet? And if anything, is there any direction from council that we need to make this possible?
Yeah, so we've mentioned this before. It was spoken about, and we agreed that would be a great event. Fire will be presenting their update on the 19th of March, and we're planning on trying to do it around the year anniversary. So we'll be working with Confire, but that event will be taking place.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you for those questions. Okay, I'll move on to city attorney report.
Nothing to report at this time. Thank you,
Okay.
Mayor.
With that, we will go back to proclamations. And I see our guests have arrived. So if the council will please join me in the proclamation for Black History Month. So I will start. Black History Month, February 2024. Whereas Black History Month, also known as African American History Month, is an annual celebration and recognition of achievements by Black Americans and a time for acknowledging their important role in U.S. history. And whereas Carter Goodwin Wilson, a Black historian, recognized the accomplishments of Black American citizens and on February 7th, 1926, created one of the cultural landmarks of contemporary America, Negro History Week, and
Whereas the second week of February was chosen for the event because it coincided with the birthday of Abraham Lincoln on February 12th and Frederick Douglass on February 14th. In the 1960s, during the height of the Civil Rights Movement, Negro History Week was changed to Black History Week. And whereas as part of the National Bicentennial Celebration, President Gerald Ford officially recognized Black History Month in 1976, calling upon the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. And
whereas innumerable Black residents of Pinole have contributed to the advancement of the city, state, and country throughout the city's history, such as the late James Andrew Harris, who was a Pinole resident and groundbreaking nuclear chemist who helped discover two previously unknown elements while working at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. And whereas Black leaders representing Pinole have broken many barriers, including Dinah Becton, who was the first Black individual to serve as Contra Costa County District Attorney, Federal Glover, who was the first Black individual to serve on the Contra Costa County Board of Supervisors, and Jamila Smith Folds, who is the first Black individual to represent District 1 on the West Contra Costa Unified School District Board of Trustees. And whereas in the fall of 2003, Michelle Lamons-Rayford assumed sponsorship of Pinole Valley High School's African American Student Union, AASU, an organization where students are able to better their knowledge of African American history, culture, community, and pride. And
whereas in June 2017, Eric Kasher was appointed by the Pinole City Council, becoming the first Black city attorney since the city of Pinole was founded in 1903. And whereas in November 2018, Anthony Tave was elected to serve on the Pinole City Council, becoming the first Black council member since the city's founding. And whereas in November 2021, Roxanne Stone, who served Pinole as a management analyst since 2018, was promoted, becoming the first Black deputy city clerk of record. And
whereas in December 2022, Devin T. Murphy was appointed by the Pinole City Council, becoming the first Black mayor since the city of Pinole was founded in 1903. And whereas the city of Pinole continues to work toward becoming an inclusive community in which all citizens, past, present, and future, are respected and recognized for their contributions and potential contributions to our community, the state, the country, and the world. And whereas the city of Pinole is honored and proud to honor the history and contributions of African Americans in our community throughout the state of California and the nation.
Now therefore I, Maureen Toms, Mayor of the City of Pinole, County of Contra Costa, State of California, on behalf of the City Council and the entire City of Pinole, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2024 as Black History Month in the City of Pinole, and I encourage all citizens to observe this month with relevant programs and activities. Now, I would invite, we have a number of honored guests, and if you will join the council up front, and then we'll have an opportunity for one or more of you to make comments after we have a photo.
You don't have to. Yeah, y'all can come. Y'all can. Okay. Y'all can hold it though. Good evening, and thank you for this proclamation. We appreciate it on behalf of Pinole Valley African American Student Union. Also want to call the name of our dearly beloved, rest her soul, Gina Stewart, who is our co-AASU advisor, who we lost in September, who is our current most recent ancestor. Also want to call the name of Troy McConico, who's currently working at the school. He is also our AASU sponsor, and he is the first Black football coach of Pinole Valley High School. Our principal, Kibby Kleiman, who is at the school with about 7 or so students who are doing the Lions Club speech contests. And so the students who are here today are the ones who didn't have practice or didn't have to work, so we really appreciate them coming. And the moms who came to bring their kids today. We appreciate it for always being so supportive and making me feel old as I am now teaching the kids of my kids. Not gonna say her name, but we really appreciate you and thank you for your support. We also want to amplify Saturday, February 17th, which is our Black History Month celebration and tribute to Gina Stewart. We would love to see all of you there. Anyone else want anything? They're cute, so that's what their job is. Thank you. Ms. Smith, folks? And now I'd like to introduce our school board president, West Contra School Board President, Jamila Smith Folks.
Thank you so much, Pinole City Council. Thank you for this proclamation. Thank you for making it an annual proclamation that you're doing. We really appreciate that. We hope that it outlives you, so that this really is something that's rooted in Pinole's history and culture and climate. We also want to make sure that we lift up our teachers, because we could not do this without our lovely teachers who give up their after school work hours, they give up their weekends, they give up all their time to make sure that the babies are taken care of and that they are learning. Please remember that Black history is American history. Every month, if you really want to push this, you give a proclamation in March, April, May, June, July, all the way back to February, because Black history is American history. This country would not be here without us. I'm complete.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Do any of the council members have any comments? Okay, with that, I will thank you again for coming and being flexible with your evening and joining us. So with that, the next item on our agenda is our consent calendar. Is there any interest of pulling anything, or does anybody have any comments? Okay.
Just for item 9C, Mayor.
Okay. And any other items? Did you want to just make some comments?
A couple questions and
Go
probably, well, 2 motions as well. The first is is under the report. It says under policies and procedures. I'm looking at the table where it says policies and procedures, and then below it says crisis management.
What page are you on?
That's a great question.
Oh.
I did not put my page numbers because I don't know. I was filling Black history for some reason, and I didn't see page numbers.
Councilor Murphy, it's page 66.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yeah.
Page 66.
Yeah.
There were mentioned of several policies and procedures that could come to before the Technology and Communications Subcommittee. Can staff explain either if that is a recommendation or if that's something that we'd like to kind of, is that a recommendation or is that more so something that is just an option out there? If they don't come to the subcommittee, will they still come to the council is probably the follow-up question I have.
Thank you. I'm going to ask Fiona to come up and speak on that.
Yeah, so we have that batch of communication policies, and that can be something that council can request to have the Technology and Communication Subcommittee review and provide further comment on before we finalize that batch of policies and present to the city manager for approval.
Got it. Are these current policies and procedures are those how staff are currently moving, or are we developing those policies and then at some point those would be codified to be the official policy? I was just unclear based on the plan.
Yes, so those policies, we are following them as a loose framework, as an informal framework, I think would be the best description of that because they have not been formally approved by the city manager. They were written by Trepepi Smith as kind of a sub-project of the communication and engagement plan. And so, you know, right now they're being reviewed by the department heads, and then the next step would be to, you know, if this is a recommendation that council wants to have the Technology and Communications Subcommittee review those, then we can do that and then present them back to the city manager for a final approval.
Thank
so
you.
we've been, sorry to, you know, I hope that answers your question.
It does, thank you. The second question I had was, I see under the consideration for this report is that staff is looking to hire a consultant to implement the Resident Academy. I do vaguely remember us talking about the Resident Academy, so I was just wondering if you can elaborate on the goals mentioned for that particular program, communications program.
Yeah, so the Residence Academy was one of the one of the original recommendations that was on the communication and engagement plan as, you know, written by Trepepi Smith. And so staff has not taken you know, action to implement that. We have not had a lot of capacity to do that. We do have a rough draft of an SOP, a standard operating procedure for a residence academy, but we're hoping to hire a communication firm to help us, you know, really implement a framework for that, or to recommend and create a framework for us to follow for years to come.
Okay. And then the last piece I'll just ask is there was no mention of a fiscal impact in the report, but I do see a lot of possibilities for what could be fiscal impact. So I was thinking around funding for our video series, The Beat of Pinole. I saw a mention of social media advertisements, that those are not currently budgeted, but perhaps would be in our next budget. And then also I'm guessing funding for the Resident Academy. When should we expect to see like our projected budget for the communications and engagement strategy, and kind of like meeting the full implementation of it? One of the questions I still have generally, if that didn't make sense, is that I'm still wondering how much it costs for that plan to be 100%, you know, done and moving. I also recognize that nothing's, you know, it'll be an annual probably review of the plan as well. Are there any proposed budgets, or have you all as a staff decided on what that looks like? Because I would like to see that ideally in the next report if given. If you don't.
Yes, so in this, there's no fiscal impact of receiving this report, because this is just strictly an update of where we're at with the communication and engagement plan. But you are correct. There are several kind of remaining projects that are going to have a fiscal impact. We did budget for a communication consulting in the city manager's budget for fiscal year 23-24. So that is there, and we can use that to hire a communication firm, as was the original plan. And then for these newer projects, such as the boost post or the post boosting and things like that, those will be incorporated in the fiscal year 24-25 budget. So you'll be able to review those in much more detail, and you know what those line items will be in that cycle.
Thank you. I just wanted to make two motions. They're not germane necessarily to changes of the plan, but they are relevant to motion for changes for the future. Mayor, would you like those now or in the future? So I reviewed the communications rubric, which is attachment B, and first of all, thank you, staff, for putting that together. Thank you, Fiona, for putting that together. It was really helpful to see the way in which my understanding of the rubric is that is how staff is kind of deciding which partners and which staff and council members are receiving information. I wanted to move that we change the communications key bit.
Mayor, can we first take public comments before?
On the consent calendar?
Yes. Sure. They're in-person public comments.
Yeah, but I would say go ahead and finish your thoughts, and then we can take public comment.
It's fine. I'll step back, actually. Let's hear some public comments, and then.
Okay, go ahead.
We have in person, we have Raphael Menace on 9C and D, and then we have James Tillman on 9D.
Good evening again. Rafael Menes, resident of Pinole, and I'd like to start with my comments on 9C. First off, on page number 64 of the agenda packet, I noted that for the website, there was a, I think highlighting indicates an in-progress note for a citizen request management tool where requests can submit requests online. And I'd like to suggest that that tool, once it's implemented, be available as a top-level navigation thing. So, like in the top bar, top menu, you don't need to click through anything, just be able to access it immediately. Because right now, I think you have to click through at least 2 menus to get to the closest equivalent, and that can be a deterrence. Secondly, on page number 67, there was a call for a consultant for media outreach expansion. And I guess I'm not quite understanding what the consultant would be doing differently from what the assistant to the city manager, Ms. Epps, is currently doing. There are some items, like, for example, setting up the resident academy, where I can see where specialized knowledge would be helpful. But the media outreach as a consultant seems like, I don't know, sending out press releases to newspapers, and I'm not sure sort of where a consultant's role fits there. On page number 214, there's an informative sort of cross sheet showing the various different intersections of types of events and content and audience and who's notified and who isn't. I think that's great. I think it's a little bit cramped in the PDF form, so if that could be pulled out separately and maybe posted on the city's website, I think that would be helpful. On page number 225, and that sort of ties into my earlier comments about the consultant, that they would be providing assistance to the city's public information officer. I'm assuming by default that the assistant to the city manager is the city's public information officer, but am I correct in that, or is there somebody else filling that role, or is it currently vacant? And I believe that's all of my comments for 9C. For 9D, I noted that there's a request basically for $150,000 to hire support staff, effectively speaking, for the Public Works Department, because Public Works hasn't been able to fill the position that's open for various positions. And I guess I had 2 questions about that. The first question was, does the city think that this augmentation process is going to need to be repeated in the next fiscal year? Or do you think that this is going to be just a one-time thing? And my second question would be whether the city or the Public Works Department or whoever's involved with that could go into more detail about why the city hasn't been able to fill these positions. Is it simply nobody's been applying at all? Is it people have been applying, but there's been a mismatch in salary expectations or work expectations or benefits? Is there, some other reason? Because right now, all that's there is just we haven't been able to fill the position. So I think a little bit more detail there might be helpful before the council makes a decision on whether to set aside funds to hire a consultant or not. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Tillman.
Thank you, Council. I had the same concerns and some of those concerns about the consultant. It seems like the city is not using in-house people and using consultants, which costs the city a lot more money, and you're asking for new taxes and stuff like that. Why can't we have in-house people? Is it because California does not have them anymore? They all moved away, or what? But we need to have a better position in a sense about getting people to do the work. And that's all I have to say. I agree with the last speaker and what he had to say. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. Are there any other public comments?
No, there are no more public comments.
Okay, and can I ask staff to address some of the questions? Hopefully you jotted down some of those.
Thank you for your questions. For the citizen request management being on the website as not having to click through multiple menus for that, yes, so that we have in the design for the homepage for the new website, it's going to be a report and issue link that goes directly to different ways that people can report different issues so that they don't have to go through. They don't have to go searching for it. For the media outreach for the consultant. So the way that I have written the draft RFP is that we have a number of wish list items that we would like to implement or have in order to expand upon our communication and engagement plan and really build off of those things that we've really laid down the, kind of the framework for. But I have also put in the RFP is that we would like to have those tasks priced individually so that when we receive those, that proposal from the consultant, we can take a look at those and then reevaluate and see if that is something that we want to pursue and include with the final contract, or if that's something that we can decide to do in-house. And I am the assistant to the city manager. I'm the PIO for the city, and so having some assistance from a consultant would come in handy for, I outlined more specifically in the RFP draft there, but for crisis communications, assistance with possibly writing press releases, or in the event that I am not available or present to be able to respond to a crisis. So those are some I remembered writing some on-demand tasks for having a consultant assist with media outreach. And I hope that was all the questions that were asked. Or I hope I addressed all of the questions that were asked.
I think you did. Okay, with that, thank you. I'll bring it back to council. Yes, Ms. Whalen, did you have something to add? No? Okay.
Mayor, should I continue on 9C?
Yes, go ahead.
Wonderful. So I wanted to reference the communications rubric, which is attachment B. I realize with Civic Clerk now, that's why I didn't write page numbers. It doesn't show page numbers as easily as our old system, so I don't have the page number for that. But I do and can reference attachment B communications rubric if folks want to review as I'm speaking on that, and maybe we can figure that out in the future, because I think that's a great key that we usually have to see page numbers. On that, so the communications rubric, to my understanding, is shown here and defined as a way for us to understand how staff is either amplifying particular information. Is that correct?
Yes, the communication rubric hopefully provides a little bit more, gives you more of a specific understanding of what we do and how we communicate to which channels specific information or topics.
Thank you. So I was just hoping that moving forward, we can move to, I'd like to move to change moving forward the communications key to include direct communications to City Council for 5 different tabs or flags. Number 1 was job announcements. I think that I would like to see job announcements when they're public go to the City Council. Hopefully, that would help also with distribution of those job announcements. Operational notices, which I wasn't too sure about, considering there's also operation updates. But I just wanted to make sure in efforts of aligning those things, that would probably be very helpful for the council to see. Surveys, if there's any surveys that go out to the community, I think certainly would want to see those surveys and perhaps be a part of taking them, or at least share them and distribute them as much as we see. And then video series. I know we're developing our video program, but I think moving forward between those 5 different tabs, that would be a good and helpful conversation for our communications, if council would like to see that as well. And I do have one more motion, which is, I'll wait for that if you like, Mayor.
I haven't found that, that page.
Unfortunately, I don't have the page number. I'm
believe-
looking at Civic Clerk often nowadays, which I know our city clerk team is happy about, but.
I think it's page 214.
214, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, so it is the 214, thank you. That doesn't have a label on it that it's attachment, so we just have to get used to the new agenda system. Okay,
Yep,
thank
that's
you.
the one. Thank you. Sorry about that, guys. Or everyone.
Okay, does anybody have any questions about Councilmember Murphy's proposal? His motion? Okay, why don't you move on to,
Oh, yes, can you please repeat the motion?
Yeah, the motion is to move to change the communications key moving forward to include direct communications to council. That includes job announcements, operational notices, surveys, and video series.
Great. And Mayor Toms, do we vote on the motion now or continue on to the second motion?
I want to hear the second motion also, see if it's something that can be combined.
Certainly. The second motion, I was just looking at the list of kind of the video series. I know we had started a really in-depth production for the Beta Pinole, but I wanted to move to discuss that, move that we have a further discussion on our citywide production of the Beta Pinole, including recommendations for a path forward for production, distribution, budget, and legal policy as well.
Okay, and is that something that you're proposing goes to the communications group?
No, I thought we would talk about that as a council.
Okay.
I think those are two different motions, and I'm happy to take those separately. or
Okay,
I would hope
yeah.
so.
So with that, do you want to move agenda item 9C with the approval of the update, to receiving the report of the update with the first motion?
I will make that motion, yes. Thank you
Okay.
for clarifying.
And I'll second that. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, and then your second motion?
I wanted to move to discuss our citywide production of the Beta Pinole and recommendations for path forward for production, distribution, budget, and legal policy.
Okay, and is there a second on that?
I'll second that.
And all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? How do you want to record that?
I'm sorry, Mayor, you're asking me?
Yeah.
You know, I suppose we will find out the gist of this and why, so
Okay.
it'll be a discussion.
So that's
I'll
a
vote aye.
5-0. Okay, so is there a motion on the remainder of the consent calendar?
I just had a couple more motion, Mayor, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
go ahead.
It was really, I just wanted to see if staff, I don't know if this needs to be a discussion item as much as a report, but where we're at with the Pinole Television Master Plan, I didn't see that in here and would like to also see standardized policies of Pinole Television's participation and attendance to city-sponsored and community events. Is that a report back that we can get from staff at a future meeting, even in consent calendar?
Yeah, we can do just a report back to you and let you know where we're at on that.
Thank you. And again, that just is, I didn't notice it in the I don't know where that is. I know we had declared having a Pinole Television Master Plan. I think that may be in the CIP. That would be great to get clarification about where that is. But I hope that will be in the report, so just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, we'll do a little research and figure out. I don't think anybody at this point right now knows exactly where that's sitting, but we'll find that for you.
Okay, thank you so much. That's all, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Did you need to have that as a motion, or do you want to just report back?
I'll make that a motion.
Oh, okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. All right. So with that, we'll move to the remainder of the consent calendar.
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, and all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? That motion passes. Okay, so we're moving along. We have no public hearings tonight and no old business. Next item is item 12A, and that's receive information regarding options to prohibit the creation of new gas stations and the expansion, reconstruction, and relocation of existing gas stations in Pinole.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, members of the public. I'm Lily Whalen, your Community Development Director, and it looks like the PowerPoint is being pulled up right now. And we can advance to the next slide here. So thank you for the introduction, Madam Mayor. A little bit of background on tonight's meeting and agenda item. At the July 18th meeting in 2023, then Councilmember Sasai requested a future agenda item regarding a discussion for the council to have of adoption of an ordinance to prohibit the creation of new gas stations in Pinole and limiting the expansion, reconstruction, and relocation of existing gas stations in Pinole. So tonight I'll be providing hopefully a brief presentation to you that might be helpful in your discussion of this item. Next slide, please. So the state of California has called for carbon neutrality by 2045. To achieve this, California has adopted recent regulations phasing out fossil fuel powered vehicles. By 2035, 100% of new cars and light trucks sold in California will be required to be zero emission vehicles. Next slide, please. Little bit of background here on some other cities in California that have banned service stations or gas stations. Following a moratorium enacted in 2019, the city of Petaluma in Sonoma County became the first city in the nation to prohibit the creation, expansion, reconstruction, and relocation of gas stations. And this spurred other jurisdictions in Sonoma, Napa, and Marin counties to follow suit. I provided a table on the screen here and in the council packet that shows the names of those cities, their population, the number of existing gas stations under the regulations, and the date that they enacted their ban. Next slide, please. After conducting some limited staff research into how those communities went about adopting those regulations, we found that jurisdictions took a pretty similar approach to adopting their regulations. Most of them started first with an emergency ordinance declaring a climate action emergency. And the city of Pinole adopted a resolution in 2021 declaring a climate action emergency. The other communities then considered enacting a moratorium or other temporary regulations that would prohibit gas stations in their communities while their permanent regulations were being developed and going through the public process. Then they conducted public outreach to determine public support for a permanent ban on service and fueling stations that use fossil fuels. They then thought through how they would address a number of issues, such as determining the extent of improvements existing fuel stations would be able to undergo, and then also incentivizing the transition to alternative fuels. And then finally, they initiated a zoning ordinance text amendment and a general plan, or sometimes a specific plan amendment to provide internal consistency across all of their policies, and completed the public review process, including workshops, and then went to their planning commission for recommendation, and then to their city councils for adoption. Next slide, please. This slide has a little information on climate policies in Pinole. So prior to 2021, the city had taken some actions to address climate change. Some of them include adopting and implementing the general plan sustainability element in 2010, selecting MCE as the default electricity provider for residents and businesses, and investing in energy conservation for city operations. In October of 21, the city of Pinole adopted a resolution declaring a climate emergency and directed staff to take certain actions. As a result of that declaration, the city commissioned a greenhouse gas inventory to establish a baseline of greenhouse gas emissions. And that inventory showed that the highest sector of greenhouse gas emissions in Pinole is from on-road transportation. The city has been developing over the last year and a half a thoughtful climate action and adaptation plan, which is anticipated to be released for public review in next month in March of 2024. And this climate action and adaptation plan will target reducing emissions in Pinole in phases through 2045. Next slide, please. This slide shows where, by our current zoning ordinance, where service stations are allowed in Pinole. Service stations are defined as retail businesses selling gasoline or other motor vehicle fuels. They're allowed only with a conditional use permit in Pinole, meaning that they are not permitted by right, but they are permitted with that conditional use permit in only 4 zoning districts in the city. And those are shown on the screen here on the map, and with those zoning districts called out. Next slide, please. Our existing Chapter 1734 of the Municipal Code regulates new gas station development in the city, and it requires a comprehensive design review and also a conditional use permit for a new gas station. This section of the Municipal Code establishes location requirements in addition to establishing development and design standards. Existing service stations and modifications to existing service stations are generally exempt from the regulations in that chapter because it addresses new gas stations. However, Chapter 1744 also incentivizes the expansion, modification, or retrofit of an existing service station to incorporate biofuel or biodiesel or other alternative fuels or charging stations for electric vehicles via a simple administrative plan check process. So that incentivizes those service stations to transition to those fuels without an onerous public hearing process. Chapter 1734 also specifies that conditional use permit for a service station can be revoked if the use is discontinued for more than 6 months. Next slide, please. This slide shows the location, zoning district, and effective year built of the 8 existing gas stations in Pinole, including the one currently under reconstruction on APN Way. Remodel history is also provided in the table in the staff report for you. And you can see that one of the stations was established in the late 1950s, 2 were established in the 1960s, 1 in the 70s, and 2 each in the 80s and the 90s. And there are no pending entitlements for new gas stations in the city. Next slide, please. So staff reviewed the taxable sales in the fuel and service station business group received by the city over the last 10 fiscal years, and that's shown on the table here in the slide and in the staff report. We reported that the city averaged about $425,000 annually in sales tax received from fuel sales over the last 10 years. That's on an average basis. So as the state of California prepares for a shift to alternative fueling, a very relevant question is related to how EV charging will be taxed in the future. And there's currently no sales tax associated with EV charging in California. Cities currently receive sales tax based on the equipment purchased and installed. So cities do receive that sales tax, but not the day-to-day EV charging transactions. And as I mentioned, at this point, there's no pending legislation related to assessing sales tax on EV charging. But as the state migrates further and further into EV vehicles, this may change. And we've noted in the staff report that other states have implemented sales tax on EV charging on a per kilowatt hour basis. Next slide, please. Oh, there's a lot of small text here. So the city's zoning ordinance anticipates that over time, the city council may modify land uses that are allowed. And over time, the city council may allow new different land uses, or they may over time prohibit existing land uses in the city. And when this happens, the land use is then considered legal nonconforming, meaning that it was established at a time when it was legal. And now the city has said, in the case of something that we're banning, it's no longer allowed. And it puts it in a special status called a non-conforming status. If the intent of the regulations in the code, it's the intent of the regulations in the code to allow the continuation of nonconformities, under limited conditions and in addition to allowing reconstruction in the event of a natural disaster. So if the City Council proceeded with a service station prohibition similar to the communities in Sonoma and Napa counties, service stations in Pinole would become legal nonconforming and subject to the provisions of the code. And this is my attempt to highlight some provisions of the code here. The important things I wanted to highlight is that the code allows for a nonconforming use to continue to operate, be transferred, or be sold. It allows for the normal maintenance of a nonconforming structure. So this is repair work necessary to keep the structure in sound condition. No expansion of the structure is allowed in nonconforming structures. However, the Pinole Code does allow for a minor expansion up to 10% with a conditional use permit reviewed by the Planning Commission. The code also allows for another similar nonconforming use to take over the existing nonconforming use if no structural alterations are allowed. And then it also, as is very common in many jurisdictions, it allows for a nonconforming structure that was damaged by a natural event, fire, wind, earthquake, etc., to be reconstructed as long as the expense is less than 50% of the assessed value of the building prior to the damage. And then lastly, if the nonconforming use is lost, so if it is abandoned or discontinued for more than 6 months, then the nonconforming status has been lost and cannot be reestablished. Next slide, please. So if the council was interested in proceeding with banning any future gas stations and prohibiting the expansion and renovation of existing gas stations in Pinole, staff would recommend that the council consider adopting an interim urgency ordinance to prohibit the establishment of new gas stations and directs staff to include service station regulation as an action in the climate action and an adaptation plan, which the council will be reviewing, we anticipate, in the April or May timeframe of this year. So we're working diligently for this fiscal year and next fiscal year to bring forward in the Community Development Department that climate action plan, as well as other key implementation ordinances and policies pursuant to our housing element. So this is the recommended path forward if the council is interested in this legislation, is to adopt a temporary urgency ordinance on those gas stations, add that action in the climate action and an adaptation plan, and that would allow that work on the permanent regulations to continue and be done by the time that the urgency ordinance is not in effect anymore. And then the permanent regulation process could look similar to the other communities that I mentioned earlier in my presentation, through outreach to the community, workshops, drafting regulations, and then bringing it through to the Planning Commission for recommendation and the City Council for adoption. Next slide, please. So the cost of preparing text amendments for the zoning ordinance, general plan, specific plan is associated with the time that it takes staff to make those amendments and take it through that processes. It's uncertain at this time how much revenue the city may lose in sales tax by prohibiting future gas stations. It would be, the future sales tax of any future gas station that would locate in Pinole. And a shift to taxation of EV charging, which is still unknown at this point, may end up filling the gap to some extent, especially if we do a strong push to encourage ample EV charging in Pinole. And next slide, please. So this is just a succinct slide that shows our recommended next steps if the council was interested in considering prohibiting future gas stations in the city. And the last slide here is our recommendation slide, which is to receive this information and provide us with any direction for future actions as appropriate. And I'm available for any questions you might have. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. I'll start to my right. Councilmember Murphy, do you have any questions of staff?
No questions. Thank you, Director Whalen, for your presentation.
Okay. Vice Mayor Sasai, any questions?
Just one question. Director Whalen, could you brief the council on some of the REACH codes in our climate action and adaptation plan? that relates to EV charging
Sure.
specifically?
Yes. Thank you for the question. So our draft climate action and adaptation plan, which I anticipate will be released to the public next month for the public to weigh in on, has a number of draft actions in it regarding EV charging. One is related to EV charging on city facilities. So there's a feasibility study that's called for in the climate action plan in order to increase the number of EV charging stations we have on city facilities. And then there's also on the private side an action to adopt the Tier 2 Cal Green building code with regards to EV charging, which is the most strict regulation in California that we could adopt with regards to EV charging. And it's primarily focused on commercial buildings and multifamily as well.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Councilmember Tave, any questions?
Yeah, I just had one. Looking at the hydrogen section of this and the stations that are out there, the only stations that are close to us are Concord, Vallejo, and Oakland. Between that, there's like a desert of no hydrogen stations, so which rules out the hydrogen market and the car or the hydrogen cars. I'm just wondering, when we say no gas stations, does that include hydrogen as well, or is it something that needs to be modified, or is it just no fossil fuel?
The focus is fossil fuels.
Okay, because it just seems to me like the same type of permitting procedures, underground storage, the same thing that you would use for fossil fuels would seem like those stations could transition to hydrogen a little bit easier than starting from scratch. And I just don't know if that's included in there as the next or a step to closing or to moving to EV. But I just had that question as to, is that being incorporated or looked at as well?
So in our recommendation, and when permanent regulations would be established, one of the steps that we're recommending is that we incentivize that faster transition to alternative fuels. I don't know what that would look like right now, but we're happy to do that research and let you know what other communities have done.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Martinez-Rubin.
Thank you. Yeah, I'd be curious about what those incentives are. I imagine they have something to do with I'm going to find the note that I made when you made the comment, but it's ordinarily related to time and the process that governments take and trying to streamline whatever it would take to have permits for alternative uses. I think you used the word onerous. Okay. Thank you for the report, Director Whalen. Are there any building permits in process now for any applications in the works now that involve fuel stations and would be impacted by an emergency, an urgency ordinance if we go that route?
So the only building permit that we have out right now is for the new 7-Eleven on Appian Way, which is being held up right now with PG&E. So that's the last step for that one. We don't have any pending applications for entitlements for new gas stations or renovation of existing gas stations. The Planning Commission recently approved the conditional use permit for the Shell station on Fitzgerald to expand their offerings inside their store for beer and wine, but that won't have any impact on the footprint of the building.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have several questions. For an urgency ordinance, it's temporary. What's the time frame that an urgency ordinance can be in place before we have to have something permanent?
So I'm looking right to the city attorney, but my answer would be I've seen them typically be about a year long.
Yeah, so typically a year, and we could always bring it back to have the city council kind of reapprove the urgency ordinance. Correct. We would just need to make the appropriate findings that the kind of urgent circumstance still exists, and then we could kind of renew it.
Okay, and then my next question, I don't know if you know the answer to this now or if it's something that we would you would find out later, but wherever hydrogen is offered, is it financially feasible for a gas station that sells fossil fuel to add hydrogen alone or establish a new station that's only hydrogen? I'm just wondering about if you've encountered anything like that.
Well, thank you for the question. We'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Okay, with that, no expansion. Okay, we do have a number of public comments online, and then do we have any in the chambers?
Yes, we have several in person and a few online. We have Rafael Menes, James Tillman, and then John Bender.
Greetings again. Mayor, council, staff, members of the public. My name is Rafael Mess, resident of Pinole, and I'd like to emphasize here that I'm speaking entirely in my private capacity as a Pinole resident. And I wanted to say that I would support the council moving ahead with a moratoria on new fossil fuel station construction and expansion for a few reasons. First off, as highlighted on page 264 of the agenda packet and 263 before it, the city already has 8 service stations geographically spread throughout the city. So we already have a pretty substantial number of stations. Secondly, on page number 261, I'd note that table number 1 shows that many jurisdictions in Sonoma, Marin, and Napa counties, both significantly larger than Pinole as well as significantly smaller than Pinole, and with varying numbers of gas stations, have been able to successfully regulate them in a similar way. So this isn't an area where people have tried it and it hasn't worked. There have been a bunch of different places that have tried it relatively recently. Some that are close to our size, some that are a lot larger, one that apparently has just 1 gas station, and it seems to have worked out reasonably well for them. Thirdly, I'd note that the map on page number 273 of the agenda packet shows that most of Pinole can't have new service stations built in it anyway. I'd say there's 4 zones that make up maybe a 1/10 of the city in total that it could actually be built in, and a lot of those zones already have gas stations in them to begin with. I do have a few questions, though. First off, with regards to the interim emergency ordinance, how soon would that be coming before the council? Would that be coming back in March, in April? Secondly, with regards to hydrogen, because I know there were a few questions that the council brought up with regards to that. There are multiple different ways that hydrogen can be produced. The most common way currently is for it to be produced as a byproduct of natural gas processing, which basically means you would arguably treat it as a fossil fuel like gasoline or diesel. So if the council was going to include exceptions for hydrogen, I would suggest that those exceptions be conditioned on the source of the hydrogen being verifiably green hydrogen rather than so-called blue hydrogen. And let's see. And finally, I think the last thing to note is that this wouldn't be banning existing service stations from providing gas to people. This would just be banning expansion or the creation of new stations. Thank you.
This one's going to be a hard one. Basically, in the 1980s, we did EV everywhere in California. Where are they? Oh, they tore them out because nobody had electric vehicle, didn't go that direction. It's political. We may have a new political climate that may go into fossil fuels. The money that your taxpayers pay for are going to have to be torn out or not used. My question is how long can you delay this to find out the political climate? If it is the new administration going to allow it if it happens? on a federal level and a state level. Why should we spend money that we're going to not be able to use? That's my concern. The climate emissions that the state has been placed on the public. My vehicle, my truck, is a 1995 truck, and it passed smog but failed because the catalytic converter was not in a database, which the state of California deleted in 2009. 2.5 months I fought that and won, and so it is accepted now. But it took me all that time. Is that well worth doing all this additional energy that may not go anyplace? I do like to see the air clean, but I noticed that a lot of cars are being sold that can't pass smog to people. 30% of the vehicles in Pinole don't have current stickers on them. That means they can't get insurance. So I don't know how we're going to work this one out. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers in chambers?
Yes, we have John Bender, Narissa De Jesus, and Andrew Melendez.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff. I just want to say I'm in support of the council taking action on this. I think it is a very significant issue. There's nothing benign about gas stations. They do have leaks, both accidental as well as there's vapor leaks that can happen. And I also want to thank Mr. Menace, because he brought up the issue of hydrogen. That's something not to be forgotten about, because indeed there is so-called dirty hydrogen versus the more cleaner version. But I just think it is something, it's time. There's a narrowing window for the fossil fuels, and this is all about our health and safety. And I won't even go into the issue once a gas station, once it closes, and that land is going to go through some sort of reuse, the whole issue of remediation. I won't even touch that one. And again, I'm speaking as a citizen. I want to make that clear. Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Narissa De Jesus, and I'm here with my colleague Marty Roach, who's on Zoom, representing 350 Contra Costa Action. We are a grassroots organization, nonprofit, focused on education and advocacy for local policy climate solutions that advance equity and enable local communities to thrive. We at 350 Contra Costa Action appreciate that the leadership that your council is providing in our county for moving on climate action and environmental sustainability by being one of the few cities to pass a climate emergency resolution with actions. We love that you are moving on these actions as well. We strongly applaud your consideration of moving on prohibiting of new gas stations, reconstruction, expansion, relocation of existing stations, and hope your vote tonight to give staff the green light to proceed, help you vote yes tonight on giving your staff the green light to proceed on your thoughtful process. We submitted a letter that should be in your packet on this topic. In line with your climate emergency resolution and emerging climate action and state policies, it is time to not build new gas station infrastructure. Doing so only bakes in gas stations for 40 years at a time when our state will cease to register new gas cars in 2035. As we move to electrical vehicles and create opportunities for more people movement without cars, there is no need to encourage more gas stations that bring with them human health hazards to the soil, water, and air, and also environmental degradation. Thank you very much for this proposed action. We are here to help as you move forward. Thank you all.
Hello. Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Andrew Melendez. I'm a lifelong West County resident, and I'm a current politics major at St. Mary's College in Moraga. I'm here today to express my strong support for adopting an ordinance banning the future creation of new gas stations in Pinole. The climate crisis that we face today represents an urgent need for local governments everywhere to step up and take proactive action against greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants. I'm so grateful that in 2021, the City of Pinole declared a climate emergency because it highlights this council's high priority on directly addressing the growing threats of climate change. Adopting this ordinance would push Pinole in the right direction by ensuring that we're moving forward with current climate goals that are set by both the city's Climate Action and Adaptation Plan and the state's greenhouse gas reduction targets. It would also ensure that we place a renewed emphasis on alternate forms of energy, including, as the aforementioned speaker brought up, electric vehicles, which will soon become the norm throughout California in the coming decades. As a young person myself, I understand just how existential climate change is, because it's my generation that's going to be living with the choices that are implemented today. There is no promise of clean air tomorrow, which is why we have to do everything that we can to protect the quality of our local environment now and for generations to come. I hope that Pinole can serve as a strong voice to the rest of Contra Costa County to re-envision a new world, a world that moves away from gas emissions and towards a future of cleaner energy and cleaner skies. Thank you very much.
Next, we have our online comments. We'll start with George Pursley. Mr. Pursley, are you able to unmute yourself? Okay, we will come back to Mr. Pursley. We'll go to Woody Hastings.
I just unmuted myself. Can you hear me?
Is this Mr. Pursley or Mr. Hastings?
This is Mr. Hastings.
Okay, go ahead.
Great. Thanks so much. Good evening, Mayor Toms and council members. My name is Woody Hastings. I am the co-coordinator of the Coalition Opposing New Gas Stations. Thank you and thank the staff for bringing this issue up, and thanks for the opportunity to speak. I really just wanted to share the experience that the coalition, we call it Congress for short, has had since we were founded in 2019 and have had the experience of working with half a dozen cities in our county and the county itself, and with other advocates in other counties and cities on some of these ordinances. And one of the things that we've learned is that there have been really no negative repercussions, no unintended consequences from the adoption of these ordinances. And I think one of the most important things I think I'd want to say tonight, and by the way, we did submit a letter. I got it in a little bit after the deadline today, so not in your packet, but hopefully you'll get a chance to read that. That has our contact information if you want to reach out. It's a pretty simple measure here. It's a pretty simple action. It's simply removing gasoline, and I say the full word gasoline because that does help avoid confusion we've had some confusion over time with natural gas in homes and other forms of gas. So we're talking about gasoline, and gasoline and diesel really, but gasoline stations as a permitted use in all zoning codes in the city. And it's really important to keep it simple and really not include all of the incentives and things for other, EV charging and any other alternatives. That all really happens in a different arena. So, and can happen, and there's nothing that, that really holds that up. This is really just, it's kind of in the category of if you're in a hole, stop digging. So it's stopping the permitting of new gasoline stations. Just a couple comments from things that came up in the presentation and then in the comments. In addition to potential for taxes on kilowatt hours for EVs, there's also the state's been looking at road usage charges based on vehicle miles traveled. So there's other ways to fill that gap of the gas taxes going away. The other thing really important, you may only have 8 gasoline stations within city limits of Pinole, but I counted about 20 gas stations within a 5 or 10 mile radius. And that's been the case with a lot of communities where, you might only have a few. In Sebastopol, we only have 3 in the city limits, but there's about 7 that serve the community. So there's really more of them out there. We haven't had any people complaining that there are not enough gas stations. So thanks again for the opportunity to speak, and I urge you to proceed with the pursuing this. Thanks.
Next, we have a telephone caller, last 4 numbers, 5748.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, my name is Anthony Bospring, representing Citizens for a Better Pinole. I'd like to play a devil's advocate here on both sides of the coin, so to speak. But first off, I guess I didn't hear in Director Whalen's presentation or report that was pretty thorough, but he left out the fact that there's a pending major construction project going on, and none of you people on the city council thought about it or brought it up yet, but maybe tomorrow or next month or next year, that the Tara Hill Safeway project was based on having a 12 pump or a 16 pump, I forget what it was, pump lot gas station affiliated with that total build out there. And that was a make or break deal. If you don't believe me, ask your director, David Hannum, in the Planning Commission, that Albertson Safeway said, if we don't get that gas station, there's a good chance they're not going to do the project there. As it is now, we're losing revenue to the Hercules Safeway gas station with low discount prices. We're losing revenue taxes from the Arco discount gas stations and other gas stations in Richmond, as well as the Costco gas stations in and around the county. So I think you should delay that decision till after you get the confirmation from Albertson Safeway to find out when they're going to finish or complete or have to reapply for the build out, because most of all their permits have already expired, unbeknownst to a lot of people there. But Ms. Whalen should know that, and that should have been mentioned as a caveat in her presentation. But that's why we pay her the big bucks. Anyway, also, I'd like to mention on a...
Sir, you have 45 seconds.
On a side note, we're burning a lot of carbon emissions up and down Pinole Valley Road. And they should do a study on that we're burning in excess of 25% emissions with all the additional unnecessary stoplights we have after 7, 8 o'clock at night, with the half a dozen stoplights we have from the Pinole Shopping Center going out to Granada Court, as well as the 2 EV stations on the city parking lot there behind the police station and the fire station that are being abused by people that are leaving their cars on the EV station all night for 6 to 10 hours of charge, and it's costing the city $30,000 to $45,000 a year.
Mayor, there are no more public comments.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll bring, actually, Mr.
Pursley just raised his
went
hand.
back up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. So when you take the main Pinole Valley Road exit eastbound off I-80, you could turn right, and within 30 seconds, you'd find a gas station. So you leave that gas station and take another right, and you could go about 3 minutes down the road, and you're at the pump house, which is another gas station. Then from there, you could take a left on San Pablo, and within another 3 minutes, you'll find a gas station on the right, and then another one on the left. They're probably 2 minutes away from each other. So basically, I think we have a lot of gas stations and in a very short and compact area. And so I think that I would surf it, and it just basically, this is a time definitely to have a moratorium. As all, we're aware of the importance of climate change and what we need to do to reduce fossil fuels. And we need to start planning for that. I know we all are aware of the multiple crises, which are the direct or indirect results of climate change. It's obvious we need to transition away from fossil fuels. And it's important that we do all we can as individuals to help this transition along. And it's even more important to be able to do this at the city level. And so I'm very, very much in agreement that we should consider 12A and move on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pursley. Okay, I'll bring it back up to council. Is there any further discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just actually had 3 questions that I wanted to follow up with that came from the public and also from the presentation. The first is, I know there had been some suggestions around like hydrogen, so I'm imagining that probably will be a topic of conversation before someone makes a motion. But can you speak to West Cat's fueling station? That wasn't included here, but I just wanted to make sure that I really want to understand the impacts of an ordinance around the West Cat fueling station, for example.
Thank you, Councilmember Murphy, for that. Yeah, we did not consider that in this this report here, so we will have to consider that in what we bring back to you if that's what the council directs here. I'm assuming that the council direction would be that would be excluded from this.
I don't know.
Okay.
I was more so asking because I was looking at the IDs of service stations. I know that's not a public service station, so I'm assuming that's what makes the difference. But for example, I guess just a follow up, does West Cat hold a CMU for that service station?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll have to follow up with that and get back to you.
Wonderful, thank you.
Sure.
And then the second question was, I noticed the list of cities. Most of them are friends from Sonoma and Napa County. Would this mean that if we pass such an ordinance, we would be the first city in Contra Costa? Is that what the staff research has assumed? Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. That is my understanding.
Okay, thank you. And then just a follow-up around the interim emergency ordinance, can either the city attorney or staff talk about the difference between the permanent ordinance and the interim emergency ordinance, both what it would mean in terms of the process of passage to get to the council, and then what would be the difference around an ordinance versus the interim ordinance?
Through the chair, I'm happy to take that one. So if the council directs staff to proceed with the exploration of an ordinance that would prohibit gas stations, the urgency ordinance would go into effect immediately. So it would allow the city to adopt that prohibition on the creation of new gas stations immediately. It would stay in place for 45 days. The council would then need to renew it. It does require a 4/5 vote of the council to move that forward. And as Director Whalen mentioned, it would be good for a year. I think it can actually go up to almost 22 months to extend it. That would then allow the council time to develop the language around a full ordinance, so we could develop the full regulations and talk about things like the West Cat fueling station and the types of gas stations, and then the full ordinance would come back similar to our regular process, a first reading, second reading, and then once adopted, it would become part of the municipal code, and that would then codify these regulations in perpetuity until changed by the council at another date.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Sasai?
Sure. Well, thank you first and foremost for the presentation, for the report. Really appreciated the different tables you had to sort of outline which cities in California have passed such an ordinance. And it was very, I think, very easy to digest for the average person in Pinole. Also want to, thank my colleagues on this council for voting to places on the agenda. This is why we're having the discussion today. But also, even back on October 19th, 2021, which predates my time on the council adopted a resolution that declared a climate emergency in Pinole. So a lot of the work that we have been doing as a city and as a council, that momentum, that motion, I think, points to really what we're discussing right now. The climate emergency that we had declared, that is not just a value statement. That is really a call to action. And I believe that we have been living up to that call to action. This is really the next step, right? An emergency requires urgency. And so we must be transformative, innovative with our policy when it comes to climate change. This is really the way to do it. And as Councilor Murphy had pointed out in his question, we would be the first in Contra Costa County to pass such an ordinance. So this is not just an example that we can set for our city and neighbors, but really the entirety of Contra Costa County who can follow suit and hopefully will if we do move forward with this. So I'm in support. Once again, thank you to my colleagues, and I encourage you to support this as well.
Thank you. Any other comments down this way? Councilmember Tave?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, I think this has been a while, right? A long time coming to get to this point. I know that, change is difficult in our community, and business owners a lot of times will see this change as why, what's going on, or what do we do? I will just say that this has reached a point where we know that in 2035, if we wait till 2035, I think what's going to happen is this problem is just going to be more difficult to deal with. I think we have plenty of time to develop something that's fair, that'll work, it's equitable across the board, and I'm excited to get started on this work. So, and I would encourage everybody else to support this as well. Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Martinez-Rubin?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation to us about what short-term steps can be taken, and then the long-term that require more thinking, processing, researching, comparing, and all of that, because it is a transition from decades of the way things have been done with the use of the automobile industries and preferred way of, and available, what's been available really here in the States and in other countries. But as we, as a world, transition from that, and the recognition, finally the acknowledgement that use of those kinds of fuels have created a harmful effect for health reasons, it's time, and it's very interesting, fascinating. I'm not sure exciting is the word, but it is very interesting to be living at a time when such transitions are occurring, and to have something to do with trying to improve the conditions which affect the public's health, as we know now, because it has taken decades of discovery about that, and also acknowledgement that there are some harms to the use of the fuels that we have now. So I would be in support of beginning to take some next steps. And again, that short-term period is the up to 22 months that we're thinking about is going to be required to then pursue a permanent regulation process?
It's really to allow as much time as necessary so the council could, it might take the council 3 months, it could take 8 months. It just depends on how involved the process is. I believe there'll be levels of community engagement and lots of, efforts afoot in that regard. So it will definitely take some time, but it could be shorter than 22 months.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I just want to explain one of my apprehensions, and that is I think this is a little bit of the cart before the horse by 2 months. This, I think, belongs as an action in the climate action plan. And I would fully support it being in the climate action plan. But I haven't seen the climate action plan to see what other actions are going to be recommended to us and what the timing of those other actions look like to be able to judge, does this one go first or does some unknown action go first? Because we don't have it in front of us. I would have appreciated having the climate action plan first with this as an item instead of a separate item. But I know, I do realize that it's, it's likely going to be a top priority. But to direct staff to, this is going to be on your work plan and get it done in 22 months, but it's an unknown what else is going to be on that work plan that's coming before us in March or April with the climate action plan. So that's, it's really a procedural dilemma that I'm having. I definitely am in favor of the second part of your recommendation, which is to put it in the climate action plan. But without knowing what other actions are in there, it's kind of hard for me to recommend juggling that this is an urgency item that needs to, go in front of any other actions that may be in the plan. So I'm not sure if anybody else can talk me out of that or.
Well, so I think because, thinking about this, it would make sense that, we'd have that plan first. This is yet another, I've been on council for almost 5 years now, and we've talked about this, I think, before, is when the state says you have till 2035, right? Whereas, one of the big concerns for me was, sea level rise. But I don't know if that's going to happen in 2035, right? But we do know that this horizon has been set. I think it's important for us to take steps when those horizons become clearer, regardless of the procedure or process. Now, if we got the state came in and said, hey, sea level rise is now, 2030, that changes, local government. And it's that constant, we've talked about it, how, the state can easily step in with some type of edict or direction and local government is adjusting. I think the only reason why this scenario came before, and I'm happy that it did, was that we know we have a shot clock here. We have a timeline. And as the timeline starts to form up, adjustments and staff we may have to move things, but I think that it's important for us to take action now. We know there's a timeline. The last thing I want is to be at 2034 and we're still trying to figure out, what to do about this item when we knew it was coming. So I think it shows good leadership on this council side to make sure that we're getting in front of this. Staff has plenty of time to work on it, and then we start putting some solutions in front of the council to figure out where to move from there.
More comments?
Yeah, I think as Councilmember Tave was commenting, the word that came to my mind is the alignment, how sometimes individually we might have a sense of urgency about anything, about XYZ, but it doesn't quite align with what there is in process, given regulations that the city has to abide by. But I think if we have the flexibility as a council to understand that there may be some adjustment needed time-wise, that beginning this process is what we would be voting on, and allowing the staff to present to us 2 months from now, or whenever that action plan, climate action plan is going to be presented to us, flag where whatever steps are necessary to accomplish what's being presented here with this this ordinance, where that would fall in place relative to other items that we're not entirely aware of just yet. But we are aware of some situations, we are aware of some conditions, and that is that there is a transition that's happening, and we either start being involved with that, or we're going to be directed to do that perhaps even more hastily than we might have time for, because we know that we have experienced that from the state. And so this, I think, perhaps will allow us some time to determine, how fast or how quickly. But again, if council has that flexibility and the patience to recognize that it's not a matter of being first in Contra Costa, it's a matter of being thoughtful about the processes that are required to not only put an ordinance in place like the one presented tonight about not further creating gasoline stations, but to complement what may be presented to us overall as a plan, with this one being one action.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further comments?
Later
Yes.
is too late.
What's that?
Later is too late. I mean, I think we got to just
Yes.
pass it. I think one of the biggest reasons for climate action, of course, it's jobs, of course, it's economic prosperity, but it's also just protecting, right, the health of our community, reducing air and water pollution, and protecting the planet for future generations. Later is too late. With all due respect to the staff and the tremendous work you all have done with the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, in 2021, we declared this a climate health emergency. Had we had a master plan for COVID pandemic, many of us would be probably worse off than we are. Sometimes we got to take action now. So, I'm super supportive. Thank you for the recommendation. I hope that we can move this as quickly as possible. But
Okay, thank you for that. Is there a motion?
Madam Mayor, sorry to interrupt over here. So sorry.
Yes.
If I could provide a quick clarification on the Terra Hills Drive
Yes.
Safeway site. So as I mentioned in my presentation, there are no pending entitlements for gas stations in the city of Pinole. That particular site lost its entitlement in June of 23, and the owner was very well aware of the entitlement and what would be lost if they did not effectuate that permit by that time. So there are no pending entitlements for gas stations in the city right now.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, yes.
Well, first off, thank you to the public who showed up. Whether you're in support or opposition, it means a lot to show up and give your opinion. And also thankful for my colleagues for thoughtful questions, thoughtful conversations. I really do respect different opinions, and it's your right to cast your vote and to reflect that. So I'd like to make a motion to direct staff to return with an interim urgency ordinance, which would temporarily halt approval of building permits or other entitlements for new service station uses or the expansion of existing service station uses, and also to revise our cap to include an action to go through a public process to adopt permanent regulations prohibiting the expansion, reconstruction, and relocation of existing service stations prior to the end of the interim urgency ordinance.
Second.
Is there a second? And a second. Okay, thank you. And I would just say that discussions help me, especially as far as flexibility, where we can revisit the plans and our priorities with flexibility. So with that, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? That's 5-0. Thank you. And thank you again for that report. Okay, the next item on the agenda is to receive a presentation on the community corner and direct staff to next steps. And welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Council. This item will be presented by one of our consultants, GHD, and Representative Colin is present here with us virtually to provide us the details of the community engagement process that we actually took last year and the recommendations by them. Colin, please take away.
Thank you, Sanjay. I'm Colin Brigette with GHD. So this study was initiated to focus on receiving public input on desired future uses of the community corner site. And as I'm sure most of you, there we go. Okay, so as I'm sure most of you know, this site happens to be a former gas station site until the 1990s, and in the first decade after the year 2000, there was a mixed-use development proposal that I think it was ground floor retail and maybe upper-level housing, and then that might have fallen through as part of the housing collapse of that decade. And then I think since about 2011, it's been in its current use with sort of the gravel pathways and signs put up to make it look attractive and so forth. And so this outreach process focused on what are the community's desired uses for this site long term. And so as part of this, we conducted 2 public workshops as well as solicited input via website. So the first workshop was held in February of last year. It was held concurrent with the farmer's market on a Saturday morning for about 4 hours. So we presented some boards where people could comment on what types of amenities they'd like to see. And people could put stickers with comments and so forth. And out of that first workshop, it quickly became clear that the community preference leaned in the direction of they'd like to see an outdoor restaurant or outdoor eating and drinking establishment, something like that, as sort of an active use that people could enjoy the site. That was everybody's top choice as a long-term use. And some other ideas were kicked around, such as a park, and some of the commenters noted that, well, there's already a park on the other side of San Pablo. The use here could be something intended more to support local businesses. People could sit at the outdoor restaurant or outdoor brewery, and then travel back and forth to other businesses. Could travel back and forth to the farmers market and so forth. Whoops. And so then we had a second workshop in May, and I should add there was a website concurrent to that that I'll get to in a second. So at the second workshop, we held an online workshop through Zoom, and at that workshop, the attendees agreed with the main input of the first workshop was they really want to see an outdoor gathering space, such as a restaurant or a brewery long term. And then at the second workshop, there was also talk of a phased approach. So it might take a number of years before a developer comes in and builds a restaurant with outdoor seating or a brewery with outdoor seating. In the meantime, attendees recommended sort of a mix of phasing. In the short term, low cost improvements, such as you could have a temporary parklet set up, or you could have a temporary street closure. So low-cost improvements that could be just a day or a weekend or a week, or at the longest a month would be the phase 1 low-cost short-term improvements. Then in phase 2, the midterm, you'd have some improvements that are a little bit more semi-permanent, but not yet permanent. And that includes something like creating outdoor places to sit, places for people to congregate, a stage that could be semi-permanent. Improvements that could eventually give way to this vision of a outdoor dining area or outdoor brewery, but would sort of attract people to congregate on the site. And here are a couple of the boards that were presented at that second workshop. So this shows examples of outdoor gathering spaces. One example from Richmond, another example, a couple examples from out of state or San Francisco, just the types of materials that could be used to create outdoor gathering spaces. And these could be potentially part of that midterm semi-permanent approach. And then the second board showed examples of outdoor eating spaces and beer gardens, including example from Portland, example from Richmond, Berkeley, the Westbury Beer Garden, another example from out of state in Georgia. A lot of great examples like this. And then concurrent with this, with the 2 workshops, there was a website which allowed people to comment. There were over 1,500 visits to the website. Over 100 people shared ideas. And the key ideas, match what we heard in the workshop. The strong support for outdoor restaurant or spaces for food trucks or brewery space, an emphasis on providing ample seating and outdoor lighting, a plaza with many uses, such as community events, farmers markets, outdoor eating area, like the Westbury or the Westbury Beer Garden was mentioned in online comments. And I should add, there were also a few comments that mentioned Santana Row in San Jose as an inspiration in terms of their outdoor seating as part of that development, and that's a mixed-use development. And so one of the commenters that was mentioning Santana Row also suggested that they'd like to see a mixed-use development, similar to what was considered perhaps in the past, and then as part of that, you could have this outdoor seating first floor. And so out of that, those sets of input from the two workshops and the online input, the short-term recommendations then are to focus on demonstration projects that are temporary in nature. That includes sort of the open street events would be one example where sometimes cities have temporary street closures for a day or a weekend, pop-up parklets. And then the midterm approach would be the semi-permanent projects that could last from 6 months to 5 years, just to make the site more active with places to sit, tables, a temporary stage, and so forth was an idea. And this shows an example of the concept between that sort of quick build, midterm, semi-permanent solutions. Oops. And it was also suggested this could be accompanied with programming such as, create a food truck Fridays where people could come and, or food truck providers could come and people could congregate and purchase food. Concerts on the corner was another idea with the semi-permanent stage. Continuation with the farmers market, so just sort of combining the farmers market with that midterm strategy for the corner. Art Fridays was suggested, or other events emphasizing public art. And commenters suggested partnerships with city parks and recreation, city planning, police department, emergency services, other agencies, school districts, community organizations to related to the programming. And then the long-term solution, there was definitely a preference for the idea of a permanent outdoor eating space, which could be a brewery or an open concept restaurant. And then key constraints, short term, the primary constraint would be if the city were required to purchase the site, the cost of that in the short term could be a constraint. Midterm constraints get into a little bit higher cost in permitting, landscaping, water, drainage, electricity, maintenance, and accessibility requirements. And then long term would be more of the same with a higher cost. And ultimately, the idea with the long-term solution is you'd be partnering with a private developer. So in conclusion, the study recommendation, based on the public input, the recommendation is the city consider investing in attracting a long-term use that would include a brewery or restaurant, and that the city consider the short-term and midterm strategies as well in the meantime. Thank you.
Thank you, Colin. I would turn it to council for any questions you may have.
Okay, any questions of staff?
None for me. Thank you.
None? Any on this side? Yes, Councilmember Tave?
Yeah. Did you, so I think most of the town has seen the Uptown Yard and that concept of the outdoor, food to site type environment. Did you look at how many different, I guess, I don't know how many food trucks can fit on there, or how many different food areas we could have? And The other thing about that is I know during COVID, like being on one of those parklets and you hear a car like zoom by, I mean, you can't enjoy your food or a drink without thinking like, what if one of these things smashes into the parklet, right? So I guess the safety component, and then like what would be the capacity of something, because that one Uptown Yard gets really full. And I'm just wondering, like, you know, with that larger space, what that would look like.
So from my perspective, I can compare with the property adjacent to us,
Right.
which actually has hosted some food trucks. I would say the community corner location would cater to maximum 3 small food trucks. It won't be more than that.
Okay.
At a
And then
time.
was the incubator or pop-up explored? Because what I'm thinking is we could probably, you know, if you're a up-and-coming chef, right, like you would be able to slide into this spot for 3 months out of the summer, generate revenue, and hopefully lease a place in Pinole. But, you know, like start your career or, you know, using something like this, if we had 3 of those and then maybe a small microbrewery that's starting out, or somebody is trying a new beer, like I'm just thinking of these places as possible revenue generating as well. But I guess, has any of that came up in the conversations? I mean, we talked a little bit about it, or I know like a long time ago, but
We haven't approached anybody. The only person I remember, maybe about a year and a half ago, one person who wanted to start a brewery, and he was doing in his house, and they had approached us to the city to see if there is a location where they can do it.
Right.
And so we never moved. You know, I did discuss with him, and we don't have a place, so I did not move forward with
Okay.
anything further.
because I think there was one pop-up in Rodeo on Fridays at Bobby Mac's place. They do delivery, and they do it all out of that one, I guess it was a closed restaurant. And I'm just thinking, like, just to kind of, for a small business to springboard from their home into a small area in the public, create a brand, generate revenue, and then eventually get into some of the, you know, vacant shops that we might have. But yeah, it was just a thought on my end. I brought it up a while ago, but I could kind of see it dancing in there a little bit. But I just wanted to ask if it was explored during this process, like just some type of revenue model.
And not from our perspectives. I mean, we did not explore that. But from programming perspective, I believe Director Whalen was, you know, from economic development perspective, we are engaging with one of our consultants right now to see the future possibility, and that could be a future item for the council.
Perfect. Okay.
Councilmember Tate, but through the mayor, if I could add, we do have a restaurant incubator right here in Pinole too, Kitchen 812. So we could, if it's so directed by the council, we could talk to them to see if that idea has legs as well.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I don't recall whether I provided any input online or otherwise, but I'm wondering about the framing of the matter. You know, here we have this open space. I'll tell you that for one, those boulders are not inviting to sit on, so we do need a little something different. On the other hand, I think that the respondents, as interested as they were to participate, whether live or online, have, and I appreciate their input, but what I'm wondering about whether, a couple things, how, was it just very open-ended, give us your ideas, what do you think you can be offered here? And now, and perhaps I'm leaning toward the direction that I would give, is how do we take the information that we got from the public's input, which I believe is quite leaning heavily on the sort of entertainment, recreation aspect of it. As a city, however, as a local government, I think we have the responsibility to combine those interests, as well as either economic development or housing, which takes me back to the initial proposal from years back, which did not happen, And I don't understand entirely why that did not happen. And I'm wondering whether we might be faced with a similar situation in any future submission by a willing developer who could combine both the public space interest with something that would yield what we've been hearing again and again, which is increase pedestrian traffic in the area in this relatively small lot. We realize that it is a challenge to developers to build there. But I think there now, is another time and another opportunity to find developers who have the ability to combine a vision of a council that allows for both public space use, that attractive recreational use, as well as addressing some of our interests on a larger, bigger level, which is the economic development. So back to the gist of what I just said, or one of the things was, how was the input framed? Did they get a sense of history as to what had been proposed there before and the basis for why that did not happen? I don't believe it was simply because it was shortly after 2008. There was more to it that deterred the developer to not build there.
I don't think we were privy to those discussions during then, but I did check the history and the proposal that was provided. And some of the community members did have the knowledge. They did know, some of who were engaged participants, they did know that there was a proposal by a developer to build a commercial retail space here. And they were not a big fan of it. None of the participants really liked those ideas either. So we didn't think that was very well supported in the community.
Fair enough. Different time, different participants.
Thank you.
Or maybe not.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I do remember that developer. He's out of Orinda, and he has done other projects. I wanted to get back to Councilmember Tave's comment about Kitchen 812. It's a commercial kitchen that caterers or food vendors can go use. They can rent the space. So I would think that they would go prepare meals and then come down here and sell them, and not necessarily develop a whole new commercial kitchen in a pop-up. But could be wrong.
Right. I just to kind of add, I had no intention of building a kitchen outdoors. What I'm saying is that I think what we could do is try to look at the programming besides of that, and try to offer a stage platform for new businesses within Pinole that are really center stage during the farmers market, during a Friday night, things of that nature. So it wasn't really, to build a kitchen, but I know breweries would be very happy to come out and have that beer garden that we were always talking about, right?
Yes.
There's a whole slew of reasons why we could do it, but yeah, it wasn't to actually build a full gas range and kitchen outdoors.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for the presentation. I'm wondering, a lot of times a development's going to happen only if the opportunity comes along at the right time, that the market conditions are such. And I'm wondering if we could issue a request for proposals, development proposals for whatever the long term is, and get a sense of what it looks like, what the market looks like. I'm looking at something like the Westbury Brewery in Berkeley. Some people are shaking their hands. They know what that's all about. It's a very small building, maybe even, a portable building that does food, but most of the area is sitting outside. It's not really a public park. It's mainly for the customers. And so I'm not sure if the outdoor seating is meant to be a public park, but that may conflict with bringing in a business if they have to also host the public there as well. I think we should try to get a business to take up the whole site. And then we do know that, the type of business that people would like to see. I have, there's other sites that have, a small footprint of a building, but a lot of the business itself involves, an outdoor, involves music. I'm thinking of if any of the council members have visited Five Sons Brewery in Martinez, that I have personally tried to get them to expand to Pinole. Just telling them that there are no breweries between Richmond and Martinez. There are no breweries. There's a market here, and that seems to be a market trend that keeps going. It's something that families can enjoy. It's not limited to just the plus 21, but what I would like to see is have us try to solicit a business to come in, for the long term. And if we get a sense that the market's not right, then we can look at having, an operator. Through my day job, I have worked on food truck events for both Thursday afternoons, that was pre-COVID, and then a Friday night food truck and beer and wine truck thing for Friday nights. And, that's much like a vendor like the farmer's market. And they do come in, and they come in on a public square. They take care of doing their liquor license and their use permits and things like that. So that's all I have. Do we have any public comment? Oh, yes.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I had two questions that came to mind, actually. So, what are the annual operational costs for staff to maintain this property?
Currently, the operational and maintenance costs are very low. It is mostly taken care by a public works maintenance staff. I would say the annual cost is less than $10,000. It's really only if we see somebody has taken the mulch or the small pebbles out of there, then we'll go replace it. And some of the work during the holidays, we just spend some time there for the trees removal and all that. So.
Got it. So approximately $10,000 annually.
Yeah, I would say less than that. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Do we have the recently assessed value of the property on hand?
We don't have a recently assessed value, but I believe the assessment appraisal was done maybe about 3 or 4 years before. I don't remember exactly, but it is around $230,000.
Great, thank you.
Okay, we have John Bender.
Once again, good evening, and yes, I am speaking as a citizen. I just want to say I am one who believes that a multi-use commercial residential use for that property is the way to go, frankly. Yes, unfortunately, 2008 was a tsunami, economic tsunami, and that is in large part why the developer backed out, Brian Hirohara of Walnut Creek. The other reason, of course, there was some local opposition from various merchants within the Old Town area who do not like competition. But I should also say I live on San Pablo Avenue. I say that because it is a god-awful place to live. Between the noise of the vehicles and, of course, the giant trucks that are now coming through from the Richmond distribution centers. I don't know why anybody thinks that corner is a wonderful place to sit out in the open. I'm sorry to have to say that. The other component is that Old Town doesn't have a lot of people. There's not the density. In the Hayes Valley area in San Francisco, there is one of these sort of community type beer gardens, coffee house in a plaza. It's public. The average height of the buildings in that area is 6 to 8 stories, even 10 stories of residential. There's a density there. That's another reason why I think that this site should be a mixed use. Old Town could use more people walking the streets. And the other point about the West Spray, that's not San Pablo Avenue. It's quiet. And I really can't help but say the noise is just unbelievable. I'm actually even thinking of leaving Pinole because I can no longer take it. This also was tried, I'm not sure how many of you realize this, this was tried in Hercules back over a decade ago. It lasted a year. The site for that is actually where Safeway is right now. And it was sponsored by a developer. It came to a crashing halt, unfortunately. It was a great idea, but again, I think one of the things that killed it off, there's not the density. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments?
No, there are no more public comments.
Okay. With that, we'll bring it back to council, and you're looking for direction
Yes.
at this point? Let me get. Get back to. Okay, receive presentation on community corner and direct staff for next steps. Any thoughts from council members?
I don't have any. Yeah, well, thank you, Director Mishra, for the presentation. I think this conversation to me is valuable, and especially the community outreach was valuable as well. But also just having the discussion about the future and the vision for downtown Pinole, for this property, hearing a lot of great ideas. Food incubator, beer garden. One thing I've always sort of heard from the public, but also imagined myself, was a municipal food court. It's very specific, but this kind of thing where if you've been to Anaheim, they have the Anaheim Packing District. I think there's a incubator like that, a municipal food court in San Francisco called La Cocina. And that's sort of space that allows food entrepreneurs to really try their business out, see if it works, and if it really shows progress, elevate that to a storefront eventually. I definitely hear the input from the public, from the surveys, the website, from the workshops. I was personally at the workshop to hear and talk to the public as well about this property. And so I'm not just reading the 2 paragraphs that's on the report, but also getting the qualitative data from folks on the ground there. I have to say, I think that a lot of the desires about what should be in this property is really a reflection of what could be in Fernandez Park. It's right across the street. It is a walking distance from many of the eateries in downtown Pinole. And I think it really points to improvements that could be made in seating areas and making it more attractive for folks to really bring their food and eat it there and be in a park environment. So those are my thoughts. I really do support, I think, an option that allows us to have the most economic output from that parcel. Not the most, but really an option that has more economic output than right now. And there's also a need for housing. We're in a housing crisis in California. This is a parcel, right, it says in the report, right in the heart of downtown, but also in a main corridor. So there are many transit lines along San Pablo Avenue. This would sit on one. So those are my thoughts for right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Tave or Martinez-Rubin? Yes.
Councilmember.
Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I'd like to us to put it out there in the market to see who responds, and that would be a developer who would be willing to, again, absorb the input of this recreational entertainment kind of venue, but as well with the mixed use zoning designation to also think about using the space above for some small units, not unlike what we have, is it a block away on the corner of Fernandez and San Pablo, which in an economic environment which is returning to the experience of consuming, the developer would then take advantage of that desire by our residents and visitors to Pinole by creating vending space or eatery, whatever that might be, but at the same time helping us increase some housing for residents who would be really at the beginning of their housing situation. The size of units that could be built are not necessarily going to be for a family, but it may be for the very people who at this point could take advantage of the kind of environment that we are looking forward to creating or fostering in that segment of Pinole. I would lean toward offering the property to developers again and seeing what ideas come before us that combine what we have learned from a recent number of people, the participants for this time around, but as well what continues to be an ongoing desire to help increase or foster that economic progress in that particular area of Pinole and increased pedestrian traffic. I know we're asking for a lot of results out of one development, but we haven't asked recently. And so I would say let's attempt that, because I think also the new generation of designers, architects, also I think have in mind an interest in more walkable cities. They are of the age where they themselves are looking to find units of housing that they can afford or begin their lives in. And that's not unlike young people here in Pinole, which could very well be between one institution, their family, and trying to gain independence elsewhere, including their housing. So I'd like to see some proposals come in. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Tave.
So we did try to, I guess, sell this property before. No?
No, we haven't put it in the market recently. No.
When you say recently,
I think 2008 when the proposal came, maybe that was the time when it was out for sale with the proposals, and the developer would have submitted their details. So.
Yeah. I mean, I kind of hear what Councilmember Martinez-Rubin is saying. We probably should put it back out. I recall nobody being interested in this property. I want to say like when we talked about it before. I feel like we had it on the market before.
We did have it under, we had a proposal, but we rejected that proposal.
And it was just one, right?
Yes.
So I think maybe, we could put it back out. I mean, I think we have further developed some of the concepts that are looking there. I mean, that's not a bad idea.
Yeah.
I just we run the risk of getting something we don't want, right? I mean, but I think this time, if we put some stipulations on the sale, I think that might actually be beneficial too.
Yeah. I would like to see us put this out for the development community, include the results of, the public information, include the, maximum densities allowed with mixed use, and, what would be allowed, with density bonus, all of that, with whether it's a 2 or 3 story, just put the parameters out there and see what we get back. you never know. We can't really, identify exactly what the development's going to be and then hope that somebody's going to answer what we want. It's got to be economically feasible for them to develop it, and we won't know that until we put it out. And, it's very possible that we get a proposal that doesn't meet all of the outdoor conditions that we want, because that's not a moneymaker for somebody, but there could be aspects of it that, sort of meet the intent of, what the community was interested in. Again, I like the idea of having more, housing. My only concern about that would be, people talked about wanting to have music here. And is that a good mix to have music outdoors or indoors and have units above? And would that be, would that stifle, some proposals there? Or if it's a, commercial office upstairs, but we all know what the office market looks like right now. So I would say just, put it out there and see what kind of response we get. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think that's a great idea. I think last time we had a number of different properties on the market at the one time. I mean, perhaps this could even be a renewed partnership with one of the developers we've already worked with. So I think it's a different market. We got some additional information to give to people who may propose new ideas. So I would look forward to supporting what I feel like is a consensus of the council to open a bidding process.
That sounds good. Do you want, do we need a motion? Okay. I'd like to move that we direct staff to solicit the site for development and provide the information from the public engagement.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Okay, the next item on the agenda is our second citizens to be heard. Do you have some cards? Thank you.
Yes, we have Rafael Menace.
Good evening again, Mayor, Council, staff, members of the public. My name is Rafael Menace. I am a resident of Pinole. And tonight I'd like to talk about a couple of different things. First off, I'd note that the COVID levels in Contra Costa County, both as measured in concentrations in wastewater over time and as measured in hospitalization level, have decreased pretty substantially. I think we're at about a 6.8% hospitalization rate in Contra Costa County hospitals for COVID, and we've seen a decrease in terms of percentages pretty substantial. I can't really show you the image on my phone, but it's basically a curve that looks like this from early December to about January 1st to now. And you could find both of those data points at covid.cdc.gov/covid-data-tracker. And I tried looking at the county health website and the state health website, and they actually don't have that much information at the county level about COVID anymore. But there's still information at the national level, fortunately. So just wanted to highlight that for people. And I guess the second thing I wanted to mention was my apologies if I was a little bit less clear or coherent on points tonight than I ordinarily am. I had a minor concussion about a week before now, so just wanted to mention that if that was a point of concern for people, figured it was worth mentioning. I was going to mention it at the start of the meeting, but I got here after the first citizens to be heard. I'd like to suggest that in the future, if there isn't a closed session, that it might be worthwhile pushing the first citizens to be heard back a little bit, like to maybe 5:30 or 6-ish, if you're going to be rearranging when things are happening in the meeting anyway, because I know that at least one person tonight wanted to speak at the second citizens to be heard, but left because they burnt out before we got to this point. And I guess finally, I don't know where this really falls, but I suppose this sort of falls where it says to be heard. I was a little bit disappointed that some of the proclamations at the January 16th meeting didn't get read out. Like we only did some of them, but the stuff for the Holocaust Memorial and Martin Luther King Day Memorial, I think, didn't get read out. And I think that sort of does a disservice to those events to only do some of them and to not highlight those. I'd like to request that in the future, if the council's having proclamations on the agenda, that it either reads out all the proclamations or none of them, so none of them feel disserved or overserved, as it were. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments?
Yes, online we have a telephone caller, last four numbers, 5748. Sir, are you able to
Hello.
unmute yourself? Oh, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, I'd like to echo Mr. Menace's last comment regarding the scheduling and posting of agendas with regard to citizens to be heard and so on, that I was one that was rushed to jump on board or to know amongst other people I know, because you decided to rearrange and move the schedule up without proper notification to the public until 5 o'clock or 5 minutes after 5, without notice of no citizens to be heard, no closed session meeting, as well as the city clerk and or the one of the people there forgot the housekeeping rules of trying to post the telephone number, the access number for citizens to be heard, and it wasn't announced by anybody on the council or the mayor like it usually is at the planning commission meeting, at the TAPS meeting, at the public community services meeting, at the county levels, county supervisors meeting, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to do one or the other. Either you post it on the screen with the phone number, and there's enough digits up there on the screen if you condense it down and can't afford the equipment to provide David Snell with the equipment to do that, just lower the font and so on to do that for the communities to help encourage public engagement and build a better relationship with your community. Secondly, I didn't get to finish on my comment, and I maybe was a little off topic, but I wanted to also ask that they consider reevaluating all the excess stoplight signals and how they can be retimed and re-keyed up and down Pinole Valley Road, the upper part of the valley.
Sir, you have
there,
45
with
seconds.
Stoplight signals that can be put on yellow or red flasher blinker after 7 or 8 o'clock when there's no traffic there. And some other times, or eliminate one or two of those stoplight intersections there completely because of the excess carbon emissions we're getting. You know, if you care about our climate change and our health and safety in the city and so on. And lastly, I'd like to ask that the request for a satellite sub-police station on Fitzgerald Drive be addressed for discussion or agenda moving forward, and be proactive on that, not wait till the rest of the city.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments?
No, there are no more public comments.
Okay. All right. Before we move to our adjournment, I just wanted to note that, you know, many, many years ago, we used to print adjournments in remembrance of individuals, and then we kind of lost that. So I wanted to invite council members that if you want to have something in the agenda so that a family member can see it rather than, read about it later. Please notify the city clerk so that we can do that. I had I had the honor of notifying Ahmed Anderson that we would adjourn tonight in his mother's honor, and she thanked the council and was very appreciative. And, he has the written agenda to see that as well. With that, I wanted to welcome Harpreet and just see if you wanted to make any comments about our adjournment to Irma or anything else.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of council. Thank you for recognizing Irma Anderson passing. I just was a little late coming from Richmond City Council, where they also had a proclamation for former Mayor Anderson for City of Richmond. She has a wonderful history in both in the Bay Area, but also the City of Richmond, but as a first African-American elected woman for the City of Richmond, also the first African-American woman elected for a city of 100,000 population. And she was instrumental both in the city, the state, and throughout the United States. So thank you for adjourning in her memory. Just want to also take the opportunity, just real quickly, as you mentioned, my name is Harpreet Singh Sandhu. I'm the senior district representative for Congressman Garamendi. And to those in the public, and obviously the city of Pinole is one of the cities that the congressman services. I just want to give out the number 510-620-1001. That's our office in Richmond. If any of the public or anybody else needs our assistance on a federal basis, please contact us. And if you do contact us, if it's different issues, we'll definitely connect you to other resources as well. I know that we were under the weather. If anything that comes up under FEMA because of weather, please get a hold of us if you're not getting assistance. And of course, for the city, I know that many of you met the congressman, and he always cares to remind us over and over if the city can identify grants that are out there for the city. Those are there, and I have a copy, and I'll leave that for you as well to look for those. And then there's another deadline that's coming up in March, which is the old called it's called Public Community Project, which used to be the ERs of the old time. That's coming up. If there are any projects that you wish to submit, please go on our website or call me and we can assist. But so thank you for giving the time and honoring our former Mayor Irma Anderson. And please contact the office any other needs that are federally or any other needs as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Okay, if nothing else, I wanted to thank Councilmember Murphy for his earlier comments about former Mayor Irma Anderson. And with that, we will adjourn to the regular City Council meeting of February 20th, 2024, in remembrance of Irma Anderson, former Mayor of Richmond, and Amber Schwartz.